You practice immortality. I cultivate the land. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276, Giant Guianxio. Thinking of this, Shenyi looked at Lu Xuan with increasingly intense admiration in his eyes. The cultivation difficulty of swordgrass is not at the same level as other spiritual plants of the same grade, and two conditions need to be met. A kendo monk who has profound knowledge in a certain sword technique uses sword energy to stimulate the warm swordgrass day and night. It is not difficult to find a swordsman monk, but one who is proficient in swordsmanship and good at cultivating spiritual plants is one of a kind. The damage rate of cultivated swordgrass is much higher than that of other spiritual plants. If the sword energy is light or less, the swordgrass cannot grow normally. If the sword energy is heavy or too much, the swordgrass plant may be damaged. Moreover, the amount and weight of the sword energy required for each stage of swordgrass changes. It is good if it can be cultivated and matured normally. If you want to get high quality swordgrass, you need excellent luck. As for the one-time improvement, to improve the grade of swordgrass, it can be called an evil act. I heard Xia Chen mention junior brother Lu before in the Sinan Palace, and learned that junior brother has extraordinary talent in the spiritual cultivation. I didn't expect that his talent in swordsmanship is as good as Duo Yi's, and he is no weaker than other swordsman geniuses in the sect, Shenyi said with emotion. Lu Xuan was silent for a while. Am I a swordsman genius? Well, I cultivate swordgrass, and swordgrass brings swordsmanship experience packages, eliminating the middleman. In a sense, I can also be said to be a swordsman genius. Lu Xuan thought without shame. Junior brother Lu has achieved the results of these 10 swordgrasses. He can officially become a disciple of the sword hall. What do you think, junior brother? I'm very happy. Lu Xuan quickly replied, okay, junior brother, follow me to the sword hall. Seeing Lu Xuan nod in agreement, Shenyi felt happy in his heart. A rainbow light flew out from the deep black sword box behind him, and swept the two of them to the top of the sword hall in an instant. He personally took Lu Xuan through the formal process of entering the sword hall. What the disciples of the sword hall have to do is very simple. Cultivate swordgrass of various grades to meet the needs of the sect. Continuously experiment, explore, summarize the cultivation methods of swordgrass, and obtain new swordgrass varieties. Shenyi quoted Lu Xuan shuttled through the Jianqi mountain peak, introducing the situation about the sword hall. Since junior brother Lu has officially become a disciple of the sword hall, he can naturally enjoy the benefits related to the sword hall. You can obtain a certain number of basic spiritual seeds of the second grade swordgrass for free, as well as the method of condensing the spiritual seeds of the second grade swordgrass. At the same time, you can also choose a third grade swordgrass spirit seed in the corresponding sword technique. Lu Xuan was happy when he heard this and nodded heavily. He has been coveting the method of condensing spiritual seeds of swordgrass for a long time. However, due to its special nature, it cannot be purchased with spiritual stones from the Sinan Hall, or exchanged for sword seals. Unexpectedly, he can obtain it directly for free after officially entering the sword hall. As for the third grade swordgrass spirit seed and the corresponding sword art, it is an unexpected surprise. The second grade basic spiritual species is extremely tolerant, and can be stimulated and nourished by various sword energies. The third grade swordgrass spiritual seeds need to be cultivated with corresponding sword energy, otherwise the swordgrass will grow slowly, and even the swordgrass will be damaged, and die when the sword energy conflicts. In addition to the above, junior brother Luke can also apply for high grade swordgrass spiritual seeds, and corresponding sword techniques. With your experience in improving third grade swordgrass, there will be no problem even applying for fourth grade swordgrass spiritual seeds. Shenyi paused. Seems to be thinking of something. I remember that there was a 4th grade sword thousand owl spiritual seed in the hall recently, and several sword hall disciples are trying their best to get it. But with their attainments in cultivating swordgrass, junior brother Lu, you are really far behind. I will leave the decision to you, junior brother, to cultivate it, Shenyi said in a gentle tone. Senior brother Shen, don't you still need to apply to the hall for the 4th grade sword grass spirit seed? You are too proactive. He cursed deep in his heart. Why don't you apply? It's just a word from you, junior brother. Why? Junior brother is not willing. Of course I'm willing, Lu Xuan said hurriedly. With the 4th grade sword grass spirit seed and the 4th grade sword art behind him, he 100 wishes in my heart. By the way, senior brother Shen, of the 9 sword grasses I brought, can I keep one for myself? He asked Shenyi. When he was still in the realm of key training, he asked Bailey Jian, who had a close relationship with him. King promised to give him a sword grass cultivated by his own hands. It's just a sword grass. Junior brother still has this right. Is one plant enough? If it's not enough, it's not a problem to leave 3 or 5 more. Shenyi said with a smile. That's enough. That's enough. Thank you, senior brother Shen. Lu Xuan quickly expressed his gratitude. The 8 sword grasses cultivated by the 4 seasoned sword key were very demanding to use, so he chose the red sword grass cultivated by the red flame sword key. Junior brother, should you choose sword grass spiritual seeds now, or choose later? For 2nd grade sword grass spiritual seeds, you can choose 20 for early cultivation. When mature, you can condense the spiritual seeds to obtain more. For 3rd grade swords, junior disciples can choose by themselves. There are nearly 20 kinds of 3rd grade sword grass spiritual seeds. For 4th grade swords, there are only 8 kinds. As for 5th grade swords, you need to master the realm of sword art. I mean, with my current cultivation level in the early stage of foundation building, I can't cultivate it yet. 23rd grade spiritual species? Yes, although there are many 3rd grade sword techniques in the sect and even in the cultivation world, they have been tested and used. There are only about 20 types of sword grass that can be cultivated, Shenyi explained. Lu Xuan suddenly understood Shenyi's confusion and surprise when he saw the wind and thunder sword grass. After learning about the detailed varieties of 3rd grade sword grass spiritual species, he chose a more satisfactory one among them. Among the 8 4th grade sword grass spiritual species, he saw the sword peacock that had left a deep impression in the secret realm near Lianyangfang city. I don't know the origin of the girl who gave me the King Iron order. He sighed secretly. After entering the inner sect, he basically stayed in his own mountain peak and rarely had contact with other fellow sects, so he never had the chance to see that girl. A cold woman who introduced herself into Xianjian sect. He didn't know the woman's name, so he could only keep his gratitude deep in his heart. From Shenyi's mouth, he learned that the output of the 4th grade sword grass spiritual seed was very small and the supply was always in short supply. He was lucky enough to get a 4th grade sword thousand owl spiritual seed. Junior brother Lu, please wait a moment. I will get you the sword grass spiritual seeds you need. After Lu Xuan confirmed, Shenyi entered the depths of the sword hall. After a while, he brought many spiritual seeds and 3 spiritual seeds with him. A green jade slip came to him. 22nd grade sword grass spiritual seeds, 1 3rd grade starlight sword grass spiritual seed, 1 4th grade sword thousand owl spiritual seeds, as well as the method of condensing the 2nd grade sword grass spiritual seeds, the 3rd grade and 4th grade corresponding sword techniques. Junior brother Lu, please take a look. The spirit seed condensation method and sword technique in the jade slips have only one chance to be absorbed, so they cannot be affected at all during the absorption process. Please pay attention to it, Shen Yechan said, while Lu Xuan was observing the sword grass spirit seeds. The voice warned. Thank you, senior brother, for reminding me. Lu Xuan cupped his fists and said gratefully. Chapter 277 Old Acquaintance. Lu Xuan bid farewell to Shenyi and returned to the cave with a full harvest. Inside the house, 22 sword grass spiritual seeds were placed on the wooden table. At first glance, it looks like 20 tiny flying swords, but upon closer inspection, you can still feel the difference. The 2nd grade sword grass spiritual species is grey-black in color and as slender as a sword. As for the 3rd grade starlight sword grass spirit seed, there are almost invisible dots of starlight on the surface, and the spiritual consciousness seeps into it, as if it has entered the vast night sky. The stars are twinkling, and the starlight is sharp, as if it is about to pierce Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness. The 4th grade sword thousand owl spirit seed has a strange shape. Many small branches spread out from the spirit seed. At the end of the branches, there are dozens of rice-sized owl birds with different shapes. They have no legs and their bodies are directly integrated into the branches. The wings are spread out, and the wings are like a sharp sword with a handle as thin as a hair. He buried the starlight sword grass spirit seed and the sword thousand owl spirit seed into the spiritual soil, and obtained detailed information about the two spiritual plants. Starlight sword grass, a third grade spiritual plant, is cultivated with starlight sword energy. When mature, the sword grass contains subtle power of stars, which can be used directly or refined into corresponding third grade flying swords. Sword thousand owl sword grass, a fourth grade spiritual plant, is cultivated with the stimulation and warmth of thousand owl sword ki. When mature, the spiritual plant can differentiate into many sword intents that resemble the fierce owl birds of ancient times. The sword has a certain spirituality and can be as a natal flying sword. It is a magic weapon for sacrifice. Sword grass is indeed the core secret of the Xianjian sect sword hall. Whether it is the third grade starlight sword grass or the fourth grade sword thousand owl sword grass, they all have their own magic. Lu Xuan secretly sighed. In his heart, I'm happy to see this. The more magical the third and fourth grade sword grass is, the more generous the light group reward he will receive after it is cultivated and matured. After learning about the magical properties of two high grade sword grass spiritual seeds, Lu Xuan was in no hurry to plant them. Both the starlight sword grass and the sword thousand owl sword grass need to be cultivated with corresponding sword energy, and they must at least have a rough grasp of those two sword arts before they can be cultivated. He placed the jade slip engraved with the method of condensing the spiritual seeds of the second grade sword and grass against his forehead, and his spiritual consciousness seeped into it. Suddenly, a large amount of information poured into the sea of consciousness. The timing of condensing the sword grass spiritual seeds, processing methods, seed collection methods, storage methods, etc. Lu Xuan stood quietly, taking a long time to fully absorb the information in his mind. Afterwards, he absorbed the contents of the other two jade slips into his consciousness and had a rough understanding of the third grade starlight sword technique and the fourth grade thousand owl sword technique. As for the other 22nd grade sword grass spiritual seeds, he planned to use some for normal cultivation and put them into the Xuan sword scabbard and then use the Zunli sword light to warm them for a period of time so as to breed the third grade wind and thunder sword grass spiritual seeds. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of Zunder sword light and a long period of time to transform the second grade sword grass spiritual seed into a third grade wind and thunder sword grass spiritual seed. Lu Xuan thought with some regret. However, it is still necessary to obtain as many wind and thunder sword grasses as possible, not only for the sake of more generous rewards, but also for Lu Xuan to use a large number of wind and thunder sword grasses as experimental subjects, to find a way to condense the spirit seeds of the wind and thunder sword grasses. At that time, we can truly systematically cultivate batches of wind and thunder sword grass, instead of just placing them in the Xuan sword sheath and waiting for their mutation to succeed. He buried 10 sword grass spiritual seeds into the spiritual soil and penetrated the spiritual seeds with various hair-thin sword energy, stimulating the spiritual seeds to gestate successfully. After inspecting the spiritual field, Lu Xuan left the inner sect and came to the cave where Bailey Jianqing was. After Lu Xuan was promoted to an inner disciple, the two had fewer opportunities to meet. They could only get together when Lu Xuan occasionally went out. Jianqing, open the door. He had already contacted Bailey Jianqing with the communication talisman, so he shouted directly, "Brother Lu." A handsome young man stuck his head out from the crack in the door. The moment he saw Lu Xuan, his slender eyes narrowed into two slits with a smile. Lu Xuan entered the courtyard and put down some blazing fruits and bingluo fruits he had brought. "These are spiritual fruits cultivated by me. They taste good. Try it." "Wow. Thank you, Brother Lu," Bailey Jianqing said in surprise as he felt the rich spiritual power of the two spiritual fruits. In order to practice, you may usually eat a lot of second grade elixirs, but you rarely taste second grade spiritual fruits. After all, you haven't reached the point where you can only eat second grade spiritual fruits. How have you been practicing recently? I think your cultivation seems to have improved a lot. Lu Xuan sat down and asked Bailey Jianqing. Not long ago, I entered the stage of perfect key training, and am preparing to attack the foundation. For this purpose, I specially applied for a large amount of funds from my old man. Bailey Giant King chuckled. Well, remember that you must adjust your state to the best. Only when spiritual power, spiritual consciousness, and physical body are integrated, can you break through in one fell swoop. Lu Xuan shared his previous breakthrough experience. Regarding Bailey Giant King, it looks pretty good. The two had known each other before joining the Xianjian sect, and they got along very harmoniously and naturally. They had known each other for many years, and they were considered to be Lu Xuan's best friends in the Xianjian sect. When I break through to the realm of foundation building, it will be time to bring you, Brother Fei Lu. Bailey Giant King's impression of Lu Xuan has always been that he sincerely studied and cultivated spiritual plants. Although he has not yet broken through, he is still bragging about it, said. Lu Xuan smiled slightly. By the way, I came here this time and brought you a sword grass. The quality is acceptable, and it comes with flame burning. He took out a crimson sword grass from his storage bag and handed it to Bailey Giant King. Haha, I didn't expect you would always remember it, Brother Lu. Bailey Giant King took the sword grass, input his own spiritual power, and held a sword flower in his arms. On the red sword grass, sword energy shot out. There was a thin layer of fire spiritual power on the invisible blade, and a hot breath could be felt from a distance. Thank you, Brother Lu. I like this sword grass very much. Bailey Giant King came to Lu Xuan and said solemnly. Each sword grass is a natural sword weapon, which is considered to be at the forefront among the magical weapons of the same grade. As far as Lu Xuan knows, the second grade sword grass is one of the main magical weapons of many inner disciples in the early stage of foundation building. The two had not seen each other for a long time, and they talked happily, thinking about the bright future on the road of spiritual practice. Sword Hall. A middle-aged monk with an aura as thick as the abyss and the sea walked quickly, his face so gloomy that he almost dripped water. Wherever he passed, the Sword Hall disciples who met him greeted him in a low voice, and then lowered their heads to avoid him. Junior Brother Shen, I just learned that the remaining 4th grade Sword Thousand Owl Spirit Seed has been taken away. It is said that he is an inner disciple who has just entered the Sword Hall in the early stage of foundation establishment. Middle-aged the monk spoke in a low voice to Shenyi, who was as gentle as jade, word by word. His aura was surging, as if something extremely terrifying was brewing in his body. The deep black sword box behind Shenyi trembled slightly, isolating the energy inspired by the middle-aged monk. He looked as normal, and seemed not to be affected at all. He slowly raised his head and spoke in a gentle tone. That's right, I strongly advocate it, and at the same time, Master Mirren doesn't have any objections. Chapter 278. Sorry to bother you. The deep-breathed middle-aged monk named Liao Quanfu, who had reached the perfect state of foundation building, had tried twice to break through the core formation, but both ended in failure. The foundation was damaged when I broke through, and as I got older, my potential was exhausted, and I had no idea of going further. Although his cultivation is a level higher than that of Shenyi, Shenyi is better because he is young and has unlimited potential. In addition, he claims that his strength is not weaker than Liao Quanfu, so even if he comes menacingly, Shenyi is not afraid. Junior Brother Shen made such an important decision privately. Doesn't it comply with the rules of the Sword Hall? As far as I know, the person who got the 4th grade Sword Kaiaxio spiritual seed was just an inner disciple who was promoted to foundation building for just a few years. Since his talent is extremely ordinary, how can Junior Brother convince so many disciples in the Sword Hall? Liao Quanfu said with a gloomy face. He has been thinking about the 4th grade Sword Thousand Owl Spirit Seed for a long time. He originally thought that he could get it for an FU with outstanding talent. After cultivating it, it might be a great help to the clan, and it could also add some promotion to the Dandan realm possibility. I thought I was sure of it, but unexpectedly, I was intercepted halfway by Shenyi and handed over Giant Kaiaxio's spiritual seed to an unknown inner disciple for training. To convince all the disciples of the Sword Hall, no matter who the Giant Kaiaxio spirit seed is given to, there will be some who are not convinced. Only by letting Elder Mirren make the decision can there be no objections. If Senior Brother Liao is not convinced, you can go to him. Elder Mirren confronts him. When the middle-aged monk heard this, he was at a loss for words. The elder mirroring in Shen Yi's mouth was the Master Jidan who was in charge of the sword hall. Even if he had 100 courages, he would not dare to confront the Master Jidan. Seeing him like this, Shen Yi softened his tone and said calmly, I understand that senior brother Liao is so rude. Among the sword hall disciples competing for the 4th rank sword 1000 owl spirit seed this time, one of them is senior brother Liao's nephew. That disciple has cultivated several 3rd rank sword grass. He is considered to be the best among the disciples. Based on his ability and experience, if it hadn't been for the sudden emergence of that junior fellow apprentice, he would have been the most promising person to obtain the sword 1000 owl spirit seed. It would be a pity. As for that one, how the junior brother stood out was simple. While the others were still complacent about cultivating the 3rd grade sword grass, he had already improved the 3rd grade sword grass. It was a one-time success. Shen Yi emphasized word by word road. Improved a new 3rd grade sword grass at once. How is it possible? The middle-aged monk had been in the sword hall for decades, so he naturally knew the meaning behind this sentence, and his tone was full of disbelief. He knew that Shen Yi was not the kind of person to exaggerate, but what he said still felt unbelievable. I'm going to visit Master Murin. If I find out there's something fishy about it, HMPH. He snorted coldly and walked away. HMPH. A mere casual cultivator who just entered the inner gate dared to take the sword 1000 owl spirit seed from my hand. At the foot of the mountain where Lu Xuan lived, there was a man whose appearance and temperament were somewhat similar to Liao Quanfu's. A similar young man stopped in front of the streamer formation with an angry tone. This time, among the people competing for the qualification to cultivate the sword Kaiangxiu spiritual species, he was the best choice in terms of ability and experience. In addition, there was an uncle of a high-ranking sword hall member behind him. The thought of it capsized in the gutter. He was actually intercepted halfway by an inner disciple, who had just been promoted to foundation establishment. As soon as he heard the news, he was furious and immediately asked his uncle for help. I don't know what happened during this period, but Liao Quanfu, who had reached the perfect state of foundation building, came back with a disgraced face, as if he had suffered a blow. The young monk had the courage to ask, but Liao Quanfu, who had always doted on him, only told him to give up, and then said nothing with a dark face. He was afraid of offending his uncle, so he withdrew with strong unwillingness. As for making him give up, how is this possible? He has coveted the 4th grade sword 1000 owl spiritual seed for a long time. Once he obtains the spiritual seed in the 4th grade sword art, he can gain a very important position in the sword hall after cultivating it. Not to mention, the 4th grade giant Kaiangxiu he cultivated with his own hands is basically in his pocket. The 4th grade sword grass is not common in the entire Xianjian sect. In addition, because it is a natural sword, it can be used for long-term maintenance and sacrifice, and may even become his natal magic weapon in the future, when he is in the elixir formation realm. But now, I can only watch helplessly as Jian Kaiangxiu's spiritual seed falls into the hands of other disciples. One loses all, and the great opportunity is missed. How willing he was. He had already found out clearly about Lu Xuan. He is well known in the inner sect and seldom communicates with others on weekdays. He concentrates on cultivating spiritual plants, and seems to have solved difficult problems related to spiritual plants and spiritual beasts for several senior brothers. However, after being promoted to an inner disciple for just a few years, his cultivation level was still shallow. Before entering the Xianjian sect, he was just a small casual cultivator with acceptable talent, without any strong background. After learning this, he felt relieved. So what if you have outstanding talent in spiritual cultivation, without enough confidence to support it? All you can do is make wedding dresses for others. The young monk thought to himself. He planned to find Lu Xuan and directly use his power to see if he could get back the 1000 owl spirit seed. I don't know what to call this senior brother. Suddenly, a clear voice came, and a handsome young man walked out of the talisman formation, looking at him with a smile on his lips. I'm Liao Yufang. I have admired the name of my junior brother for a long time, and I came here to pay a special visit today. Hearing this, the handsome monk smiled even more. Brother, you are here just in time. I'm hosting a banquet for two spiritual beast brothers today. The brothers can taste the spiritual fruit that I cultivated with my own hands. The handsome monk, also known as Xuan, said with a smile. A banquet of spiritual fruits? As a disciple of Xianjian sect, what kind of cats and dogs do you need to entertain? When Liao Yufang heard this, a trace of contempt flashed in the corners of his eyes, and his evaluation of Xuan was once again lowered by 3 points. Please ask junior brother Lu to lead the way. Although he was disdainful in his heart, he still maintained his superficial skills, and followed Xuan into the flowing light talisman formation. Spiritual energy gushed out from his feet and he quickly rushed to the mountainside. After about 10 breaths, the two entered an elegant courtyard. Senior brother Lao, we've arrived. The shabby house is simple and simple. We only have some simple spiritual fruits to entertain us. Please forgive me, senior brother. Xuan brought Liao Yufang into the courtyard. Yes. Liao Yufang responded softly, his eyes scanning the courtyard. His pupils suddenly shrank. In the small yard, a loon bat with snow white feathers all over its body was elegantly tasting the sliced spiritual fruits. Seeing him come in, a pair of black jewel-like pupils swept over it gently, and its attention returned to on the spiritual fruit in front of you. Liao Yufang couldn't help but swallowed his saliva. When he was about to talk to Xuan, a small ape with a body like crystal jade walked out from behind the white loon bird. He glanced at him with red eyes, and then lowered his head shyly. Excuse me. Liao Yufang instantly felt the urge to escape from here. Chapter 279. A heart that can't be warmed. Senior brother Lao, please sit down. Xuan on the side extended his hand to greet him with a half smile. After he came back from Bailey Giant King, he received a communication talisman from Shenyi outside the talisman array. Inside the talisman, Shenyi informed him that some of the senior officials of the Sword Hall were dissatisfied with him for getting the 4th grade sword Thousand Owl Spirit Seed, but the deal was already done. While he is relieved, he has become more cautious recently. After learning all this, Xuan immediately became nervous, and in the name of the spirit fruit spirit jelly, he invited the 2 little legs of Xuanshan Bailuan and White Jade King Shanape to support the scene. Unexpectedly, a monk came to the door so quickly. Xuan smiled and looked at Liao Yufang, whose expression suddenly became tense. He took the spirit fruit and spirit slurry from the house and placed it in front of him. Thank you, junior brother Lu. Liao Yufang said softly. Are these the spiritual beast friends in the yard that junior brother calls them? He asked Xuan. He grew up in the sect since childhood and has been promoted to the inner disciple for nearly 20 years. He has a deep understanding of the sect, which naturally includes these 2 spiritual beasts. The 2 beasts are the descendants of the sect's guardian spirit beasts. They have unique bloodline talents. In the eyes of some Danji masters, they are like treasures and are extremely loved. There are even foundation building monks who specially raise and take care of them. Although it is only a 3rd grade spiritual beast, it is actually not weaker than Liao Yufang himself. Not to mention, the 2 beasts represented 4th, 5th and 6th grade sect protecting spirit beasts. His uncle, who was approaching his end and had perfect foundation building, was completely unworthy in front of the parents of the 2 beasts. Therefore, he was eager to know the relationship between the 2 descendants of the sect protecting spirit beasts and Xuan. Xuanshan Bailuan and White Jade King Shanape are both my friends. They often come to me to play and ask for spiritual fruits. As for the other ones, they are spiritual beasts that I raise in the cave. Xuan replied. That's it. Hearing that the loon bird and the ape just tasted Xuan's Hang's spiritual fruit, Liao Yufang suddenly felt relieved. He pinched a piece of the spiritual fruit that burned like a flame and put it into his mouth. Ahem. His eyes narrowed and he choked on the spirit fruit. In his sight, Xuan came to Xuanshan Bailuan and stroked its white feathers gently. It turns out that the descendants of 5th and 6th grade spiritual beasts can be touched. With such incredible thoughts, Liao Yufang swallowed the flame fruit in his mouth with difficulty. A burst of hot breath exploded in his mouth, and immediately, warm spiritual power, with a refreshing fragrance, flowed through his limbs and bones. At this moment, my whole body felt warm, except for my cold heart. He tasted the spiritual fruit in front of him mechanically, and when he turned his head, he saw Xuan playing with a few crystal white hairs on the head of the white jade sky ape. A hint of intimacy flashed in the red eyes of the delicate and small ape. While chewing the spiritual fruit, his head leaned against the palm of Lu Xuan's hand. Liao Yufang's eyes almost fell out. The little ape in front of him looked cute and shy, but he knew its details very well. You can switch from being cute and shy to a monstrous beast at any time. The reputation of the parents of this white jade ape can be said to be resounding throughout the Xianjian sect, and it can be said that it has defeated all the powerful monks in the sect. Most of the sect's masters and true disciples have a lot of friendship with them. Hand to hand, hand to hand. Seeing the scene of the white jade sky ape showing off its cuteness in the palm of Lu Xuan's hand, Liao Yufang only felt the coldness of the Icelluo fruit in his mouth, being stronger than ever before. The alternating spiritual powers of the blazing fruit and the Bingluo fruit, water, and fire, were just like his complicated and changeable mood at the moment. Senior brother Liao, don't just eat the spiritual fruit, taste the spiritual pulp I brewed. Lu Xuan greeted him. Liao Yufang nodded, raised his head, and took a big sip of Beiguolingjing. The various flavors of spiritual fruit changed in his mouth, giving him a feeling of drunkenness. Junior brother Lu, I heard that you recently obtained a 4th grade sword 1000 owl spiritual seed. I wonder where. Senior brother, you heard about it? Lu Xuan asked lightly. I'm a disciple of the sword hall. I came here 10 years earlier than my junior brother. I was lucky enough to cultivate a few 3rd grade sword grass. I have always been very concerned about the remaining 4th grade sword grass spiritual seed in the sword hall. Liao Yu after entering the courtyard, Fang's tone became softer and softer unknowingly. It turns out to be senior brother Jiantang. Lu Xuan acted as if he only knew Liao Yu Fang's origins, and nodded suddenly. It's true. Senior brother Shenyi gave me 10 2nd grade sword grass spiritual seeds before. 9 of them were successfully cultivated, and the other one mutated into a 3rd grade sword grass. After senior brother Shen learned about it, he gave me the sword 1000 owl spirit seed to cultivate. Lu Xuan said slowly. He did not hide his talent in spiritual cultivation. This talent is not offensive at all, does not harm other sect members, and at the same time, plays a very good supporting role for the sect. Only by fully displaying your talents in the spiritual plant can you be qualified to obtain higher level spiritual seeds, and thus obtain more generous light group rewards. As for the cultivation, treasures and other rewards brought by the light group, he will naturally hide them deeply, and will not let anyone know his true strength. In the eyes of other disciples who are familiar with him, he is just an ordinary psychic planter who is keen on cultivating spiritual plants and beasts. From entering the sect to now, this persona can be said to have been implemented all the way to the end. Improve 3rd grade sword grass. Liao Yufang couldn't help but mutter to himself when he heard Lu Xuan's words. He was rebellious by nature, but he also knew the meaning behind these words. He only felt that the Beiguolingjing in his mouth was getting more and more bitter. Junior brother Lu, this spiritual jelly is brewed very well. I'm a little drunk, so I will leave first. I will visit junior brother Lu another day to ask for your advice and experience in cultivating sword grass. After tasting a few more sips of the spiritual jelly, Liao Yufang put it down. With the jade wine glass in his hand, he bid farewell to Lu Xuan. Okay, welcome senior brother Liao. Although Lu Xuan knew that Liao Yufang was not a good person, he did not do anything that would endanger him. In addition, he was in a sect, so he said with a smile, based on the purpose of being kind to others. He sent Liao Yufang out of the small courtyard, and only returned to the courtyard after his figure completely disappeared from his sight. Thank you to old friends for coming to the market today. Come on, come on. I have a lot of spiritual fruit and spiritual juice. You have enough to eat today. He greeted Xuanshan Bailuan and Baiao Kingshan warmly. This time he invited the 2 beasts over, and he spent a lot of money. The inventory of flame fruits and ice rose fruits suddenly decreased a lot, and the few remaining jade scale fruits were almost eaten. I also drank most of the syrup, but the effect is quite obvious. Under the control of the 2 descendants of the sect protecting spirit beasts, a possible storm was eliminated invisibly. It can be said that I have been raising mile eggs for many days, and using them for a while. He looked at Xuanshan Bailuan and White Jade Kingshan, who were happily tasting the spirit fruit spirit juice in front of him, and a hint of warmth flashed in his eyes. Chapter 280. Cultivation increases rapidly. After Xuan Bailuan and Baiyu King Yuan had eaten and drunk their fill, Lu Xuan watched them leave, cleaned up the yard, and returned to the house. He sat cross-legged on a white jade cushion, practicing the great 5-element kung fu, absorbing the surrounding pure spiritual energy into his meridians like a whale sucking water. Liao Yufang's appearance made him realize that even in the sect, it does not necessarily mean peace and tranquility. Being strong will involve more interests, and being weak will be bullied intentionally or unintentionally. This time, with the help of the 2 young spirit beasts guarding the sect, he escaped a possible disaster, but he couldn't always have such good luck. Therefore, it is most important to have a deep enough cultivation and strong enough strength. About an hour later, Lu Xuan opened his eyes and exhaled a deep breath. It seems to have improved a little, but it seems to have not changed. After an hour of hard practice, the spiritual fluid in the Danshan could not feel much change. Lu Xuan had long accepted his mediocre qualifications on the road of cultivation, and his expression was calm, not affected at all. Practice is not the point is the spiritual plants in the cave. Lu Xuan smiled as his spiritual sense sensed the rich spiritual energy of plants and trees coming from all over the mountain. For the next half a month, he basically stayed on the mountain, rarely went out, and focused on cultivating spiritual plants and raising spiritual beasts. Liao Yufang's appearance was just a little ripple in the peaceful days, and nothing happened afterwards, which Lu Xuan was happy to see. In the courtyard, a deep purple sword light was as graceful as a startled wild goose, as graceful as a swimming dragon, and the sword energy was crisscrossed. Where the sword tip pierced seemed to have a little starlight flashing, and the dazzling light contained a strong murderous intent. There was a clanging sound. The purple lightning sword was inserted into the Yangtze sword sheath, and the lightning on the sword body made the ancient sword sheath tremble endlessly. The starlight sword art is considered to be an entry point, and I can try to cultivate the 3rd grade starlight sword grass. He took out the sword grass spirit seed with tiny starlight flashing on the surface, and planted it in the spiritual soil, and strands of spiritual rain seeped into it. Starlight sword grass, a 3rd grade spiritual plant, is cultivated with starlight sword energy. The mature sword grass plant contains slight star power, which can be used directly or refined into a corresponding 3rd grade flying sword. Carefully feeling the detailed status transmitted by the starlight sword grass spirit seed, he shook the flying sword in his hand, and a tiny starlight sword light penetrated the spiritual soil and sank into the sword grass spirit seed. Being able to feel the subtle needs of the sword grass is my biggest advantage compared to other sword hall disciples who cultivate sword grass. Lu Xuan sighed in his heart. Due to limited talent, the more difficult 4th grade Thousand Owl sword art has not yet been mastered, so the sword Thousand Owl spirit seed can only be put aside temporarily. He carefully inspected the spiritual field and observed the growth of each spiritual plant. In a remote corner of the mountain, several fairy peaches are beautiful alone. Small spiritual peaches have grown in the lush pink and white peach leaves. The peach was white with a hint of red, looming between the peach leaves, half hidden and half covered, looking extremely immature, but if you look at it for a second, you will feel that it has a natural charm. It seemed to tell Lu Xuan that it was plump and juicy, tempting him to pounce on it and bite it hard. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness sensed something was wrong, and his spiritual power surged, and a misty green light fell on his head. A cool breath surged into his mind, and his eyes immediately became clear, and the small peach in the peach leaf returned to its normal form. He looked down at the demon ghost vine at his feet. Various tentacles of different sizes grew on the grapevines, crawling towards the fairy peach not far away in a strange form. Lu Xuan also cast a purification spell, allowing the demon ghost vine that was submerged in the sea of desire created by the fairy peach to return to normal instantly. As the fairy peach grew better and better, Lu Xuan clearly felt that their temptation increased. With his spiritual consciousness at the early stage of foundation building, if he was not careful, he would fall into the illusion unknowingly. He took the demon vine and fled from the area where the fairy peach was. In the spiritual field, covered with wuling soil, if the Tibetan yuan grass was not planted in the spiritual soil, it would probably be confused with the unknown spiritual grass not far away. Only when the spiritual consciousness captured the concentrated essence deep in the plant could we know what kind of spiritual treasure it contained. Under Lu Xuan's careful care, the 5-element of the 5-element fruit were full of power, complementing each other and transforming naturally. The Yunling Pines in another spiritual field felt that Lu Xuan was not far away, and their spirituality was increasing day by day. They welcomed him very warmly, and the pine waves seemed to be cheering and rejoicing. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness gently touched the Yunling Pines, and felt an unprecedented ethereal nature. Around the Xuan iron bamboo, as the bamboo grew taller and taller, the cracks on the bamboo also increased. Hundreds and thousands of strange sounds could be heard from afar, mixed together, and impacted Lu Xuan's eardrums. Without saying a word, the demon vine quietly lurked over, and many light grey vines like tiny tentacles stretched out from the vines, directly blocking many cracks. The strange sound in his ear stopped abruptly. It's true that one thing can defeat another. Lu Xuan sighed as he watched the demon ghost vine tentacles being pulled out from the cracks of the magic bamboo with great reluctance. He then came to the cave of the earth fire tributary. The 4th grade earth fire heart lotus was in the hot magma, allowing it to wash and wash. At the top of the rhizome formed by irregular light red crystals, a red lotus pod was very conspicuous. There were tiny protrusions on the surface of the lotus pod, and fiery red spiritual power continued to seep out from the protrusions. The 4th grade earth fire heart lotus has entered the stage of forming lotus seeds. In the concave part of the rock wall above, in the center of the charred phoenix tree, the lotus phantom formed by the red lotus flame has shrunk a lot, and the phantom petals are trembling slightly, as if they will break at any time. However, the pair of phoenix phantoms inside are much more solid than at the beginning, and they are still flying happily without noticing the fragility of the lotus flame. It's almost time to change to a new red lotus flame, Lu Xuan muttered to himself. Fortunately, the white light ball of the flaming fruit bloomed several 3rd grade red lotus flames, which were at least enough for the early growth of the 6th grade phoenix tree. Leaving the earth fire cave, Lu Xuan found that the water firefly grass he had planted earlier was gradually entering the fully mature stage. The azure and slend leaves filled the entire spiritual field, and the fluorescence flickered, as if forming a small piece of bright starry sky. Harvest a 2nd grade water firefly grass and gain 1 year of cultivation. Harvest a 2nd grade water firefly grass and gain a 2nd grade soul enriching pill. More than 80 water fireflies have entered the fully mature stage, but there are slight differences. The translucent progress bars under the spiritual plants are slightly different. However, they are 2nd grade spiritual plants, and they have all entered the fully mature stage. They don't consume much greenwood source energy. Lu Xuan simply doesn't wait for them to mature naturally, and directly ripens 50 water fireflies. The remaining 30 or so plants are used to condense spiritual seeds, so that the number of water fireflies planted in the next batch can be larger. One after another, he picked up various treasures. 1 or 2 years of cultivation, a 2nd grade soul enriching pill, a 3rd grade water dragon talisman, a 2nd grade soul enriching pill recipe. 50 water fireflies, 16 of which brought cultivation rewards, instantly increasing his cultivation by 28 years. Years of hard cultivation are not as good as planting an acre of land. Lu Xuan sighed as he felt the surge of spiritual fluid in his body. Chapter 281 Brother, I'm not afraid of hardship. When another batch of water fireflies mature, we will be able to enter the middle stage of foundation building. After Lu Xuan digested the increase of more than 20 years of cultivation, he felt the spiritual fluid filling up in his danshan, and had an intuition that he was about to touch a new realm. From noticing that the cultivation bonus brought by the spiritual firefly grass was drastically reduced, and starting to improve its varieties to obtaining the 2nd grade water firefly grass, Lu Xuan has received no less than 40 years of cultivation bonus. However, due to his ordinary bones, he is still a hair's breadth away from breaking through to the middle stage of foundation building. With his talent, he is definitely among the last in the Xianjian sect. For those geniuses with extraordinary talents in the sect, it usually takes 10 to 20 years to break through from the early stage of foundation building to the middle stage. Those with true inheritance level talents are more likely to break through in less than 10 years. If Lu Xuan concentrates on hard work, he may not be able to successfully break through even after 50 years. Fortunately, the existence of the light ball has greatly shortened the talent gap between each other, and even has a tendency to strike back. From the time he started to plant water fireflies to the new batch, it has only been a short 3 or 4 years, and the middle stage of foundation building is only a stone's throw away. Farming makes people progress. I love farming. Xuan looked at the spiritual plants all over the mountain and smiled. He did not use the greenwood source energy to ripen the remaining 30 or so water fireflies, but let them grow naturally, and then use them to condense spiritual seeds after they matured. 35 water fireflies should be able to get no less than 150 spiritual seeds, which is enough. If there are more, the spiritual power will not be able to support the needs of spiritual plants. Xuan returned to the house with a full reward of light balls. Brother Xuan, are you there? After resting for half a day, a low voice came from outside the talisman formation. Yes. Xuan hurried to the foot of the mountain and opened the flowing light talisman formation. At a glance, he saw a square-faced, serious-looking middle-aged cultivator standing upright in front of the formation. He scanned the middle-aged cultivator's cultivation level at least in the middle stage of foundation building, and his expression suddenly became much more solemn. I wonder what my name should be. What's the matter with you, senior brother? Junior brother Lu, you can call me senior brother Xuan. I came here this time to give you a task. I've been promoted to an inner disciple for several years, and it's time to complete the sect's garrison mission. Sect's garrison mission? Please tell me in detail. Xuan's heart tightened, and he said respectfully, yes, this is the obligation that every foundation building disciple should fulfill. The sect has many garrisons in various parts of the cultivation world, which are used to collect resources, guard dangerous places, protect independent cultivators, etc. Most of them require foundation building cultivators to be stationed there to suppress some villains, so as not to damage the interests of the sect. Senior brother Xuan, can I not choose this sect garrison mission, or extend it for a few dozen or 100 years? Xuan asked tentatively. Brother Lu, this won't work. The garrison mission is usually assigned to inner disciples who have been in the sect for a few years. After all, the early stage of foundation building is completely sufficient. It would be a bit of a waste to use fellow disciples in the middle stage of foundation building. If you don't want to go, it may cause the brothers from the discipline hall to come and solve the problem, and you may be punished for it. Xuan's mouth twitched. Although he rarely went out and didn't communicate much with his fellow disciples, he also knew the reputation of the discipline hall. If they came, he would at least be skinned. What are the general punishments? He still had a glimmer of luck in his heart. If it was just a fine of spirit stones or sword seals, it would not be unacceptable. It would be a waste of money to get rid of the disaster. But the words of the middle-aged cultivator made him feel cold in his heart. Disobeying the sect's orders is usually punished by confinement for 10 years. You are not allowed to go out for 10 years. After the end, you will still be forced to complete the mission. 10 years of confinement? Xuan shook his head. If it was really confined for 10 years, most of the spiritual plants on the mountain would wither after they matured. Brother Lu, you don't have to be so resistant. The sect won't let you waste a few years of effort. During the garrison period, there will be at least 300 sword seals per year, and the garrison locations are generally small families and independent cultivators, so there is almost no risk. It is rare to hear of fellow disciples losing their lives because of this. The middle-aged cultivator explained when he saw that Xuan was somewhat reluctant. 300 sword seals per year. That means you can get at least 3 4th grade spirit seeds. Since he couldn't refuse, Xuan had to accept it. Fortunately, the number of sword seals subsidized did not disappoint him. Please also introduce me to the details of the garrison location. Okay. The middle-aged cultivator nodded. There are currently 3 places for you to choose from, Junior Brother Lu. The first one needs to be reached within 3 months. It's a city for independent cultivators that produces several kinds of rare minerals. It's less than 1,000 miles away from the lower mountains and can subsidize 300 sword seals every year. Although the number of sword seals is the least, it's more popular because it's located near the lower mountains, surrounded by many secret realms, and monsters and evil spirits often appear. There are other inner disciples vying for this opportunity. The second place is located in Xuan City, which is home to many large forces. The sects say in the city is average. You need to arrive there within 1 month. Xuan City is more than 1,000 miles away from the Jian sect. It's easy to encounter evil cultivators. It's the first choice for fellow disciples who want to hone their combat capabilities. Due to the higher danger, the subsidy for sword seals will be more, with 360 sword seals every year. What about the last one? Lu Xuan asked with a frown. He was not very satisfied with these two garrison locations. One was close to the Loyan Mountains, and the other was not far from the Jian sect. It sounded like both of them had considerable risks. The last one is located near the Boundless Sea, on a large island. It produces some special spiritual objects, sea fish and sea beasts, and some rare spiritual herbs, etc. It is said that rare spiritual liquids can be found occasionally on the surrounding islands. But there are not many opportunities there, and it cannot achieve the purpose of tempering oneself. In addition, it is located in a bitter and cold place, so it is usually semi-mandatory to entrust an inner disciple to go there, and the number of sword seals subsidized each year is 320. Special sea fish and sea beasts, rare spiritual herbs, and the possibility of finding spiritual liquid. The most important thing is that there are no secret realms or sinister sect cultivators, which means that the safety is more reliable. Hearing this, Lu Xuan's eyes lit up. Brother Xuan, then I will choose the island near the Boundless Sea. I'm a casual cultivator. I'm not afraid of hardship or fatigue. Please help me, brother, and let me go to the island to train for a few years. Lu Xuan said to the middle-aged cultivator with a sincere face. Safe, reliable and risk-free. You can also see various sea beasts and spiritual herbs, and it is possible to find spiritual liquid that can cultivate dragon skeleton grass. Where can I find such a good job? Brother Lu, are you sure? The middle-aged cultivator asked with some doubt. In fact, there were too few inner disciples who chose that island. Everyone wanted to stay away from the bitter cold island. Lu Xuan's behavior made him a little uncomfortable. Everyone wanted to find opportunities and fight demons to defend the way. How could they take the initiative to move to the bitter cold island? Yes, yes. Lu Xuan responded quickly. Chapter 282 Weak and Helpless. Sutra Library. Lu Xuan walked out slowly. After choosing the specific location of the garrison mission, he came to the Sutra Library, wanting to collect as much information as possible. The location of the island, the forces on the island and its surroundings, the nearby secret realms, the frequency of appearances of monsters, evil spirits, etc. The island where he was going to garrison for 3 years was called Kangming Island. The island was rich in a kind of Kangming spiritual fish, mainly 2nd grade, and often appeared at the 3rd grade level. The meat itself was extremely delicious, and contained rich spiritual power. The fish gall was the main material of many elixirs. Therefore, it was occupied by the Xianjian sect, and the Kangming spiritual fish produced were steadily supplied to the sect. Kangming Island was no less than 10,000 miles away from the Xianjian sect, and the location was very remote, worthy of the description of the middle-aged cultivator as a bitter and cold place. There were several small sects in the surrounding large islands, with the highest strength being the foundation building realm. In addition, there were some small families and many casual cultivators. The spiritual energy on the island is much thinner than other garrison areas. In addition, there are no secret places to explore nearby, and there are no large number of demon beasts and evil cultivators to be tempered, so it has always been the last choice. The island is close to the Boundless Sea, and is rich in some rare and strange spiritual herbs and spiritual beasts. In addition, it is also recorded that fellow cultivators have discovered several 3rd grade and 4th grade spiritual liquids, which are the most suitable for Lu Xuan. After learning the detailed information about Kangming Island, Lu Xuan returned to the cave and began some preparations. He carefully counted his current strength. His cultivation is close to the middle stage of foundation building, which is considered above average in Xianjian sect, but it can be said to be at the master level outside the sect. There were so many casual cultivators in Linyang Market before, but only a few were in the foundation building stage, and they were all cultivators with exhausted potential. Although his cultivation is mediocre, his actual combat power is quite considerable. Among them, the strongest ones are 4.5 4th grade sword charms, 1.5 Xiaohei sword charms, 2 big sun sword charms, and 1 star falling sword charms. Each has its own characteristics, and at the same time, they all have the lethality to severely injure, or even kill the cultivators in the middle and late stages of foundation building. In addition, after using the sword energy of the 4 seasons, to cultivate sword grass day and night, and obtaining sword experience packages from the light group, his control over the 4 seasoned sword art has reached perfection, and he has understood the sword meaning of the 4 sword arts. In addition, there are unlucky sword pills in Danshan, more than 10 explosive flame beads that can instantly burst out powerful killing, Finian pills that can burn blood and greatly improve strength, and the 5 element intermediate magic. There are also the 3rd grade magic weapon Purple Lightning Sword, Fengayu Jade Seal, and the 3rd grade talisman Water Dragon Talisman, etc. In terms of defense, after practicing Liuli Bone Forging method and Teksu Transformation Dragon chapter, and continuously taking Jade Scale Fruit and Golden Marrow Jade Liquid that can enhance the strength of the physical body has reached an extremely strong level, and most 3rd grade magic weapons cannot cause significant damage to it. In addition, there is a substitute evil infant who can block a fatal blow for him at a critical moment. At the same time, there is also the King Mu source energy condensed from the life essence of the 5th grade King Xuan deer. In addition to ripening spiritual plants, it has a very strong healing ability. For the mysterious evil spirits, Lu Xuan has the 3rd grade treasure Wookiee Jade that can detect the existence of evil spirits, the 4th grade Yunshan Jade Scroll that can cause severe damage to evil spirits, and the 3rd grade Jingling Talisman. Most of the strange level evil spirits can be easily caught. In terms of escape, he is relatively weak. He can hide his body with the 3rd grade magic weapon Yinling Cloak, the 5 element escape method, and the floating light body method, but it is only weak in relative terms. The 5 element escape method and the floating light body method practiced by the Xianjian sect are already extremely difficult for casual cultivators from the outside world to obtain, not to mention the Yinling Cloak, that has a wonderful effect in certain specific scenes. Although I have many high-grade rare magic weapons and treasures, I'm still a weak and helpless spiritual plant master. Lu Xuan warned himself in his heart. Choosing to stay at Kangming Island has avoided most of the possible risks, but he still keeps a cautious heart. When you go out, you must be kind to others. Don't put yourself in trouble for a few opportunities. You must be careful and careful. It is important to save your life. As long as the spiritual field is there is no fear of no opportunities. Of course, cautious retreat does not mean that you can be bullied at will. If you can't beat them, just run away. Send a message to the sect to mobilize people. If you can beat them, cut the Gordian knot and do your best to crush them to ashes. Lu Xuan thought about the rules of conduct for this trip to Kangming Island. I have to take some of the spiritual plants in the spiritual field with me, so that I won't be able to pick them in time after they mature and get the light ball reward. Lu Xuan thought secretly. This time, he was stationed at Kangming Island for 3 years. With his responsibilities and the distance of more than 10,000 miles, he could only go back to the sect a few times. There are many spiritual plants in the spiritual field with a short growth cycle or about to mature. It is not appropriate to leave them in the sect, let them mature naturally, or give them to other fellow disciples, to pick them on behalf of them. Lu Xuan decided to take some with him. I must take the firefly grass spirit seeds with me. Although I'm only a hair's breadth away from breaking through the middle stage of foundation building, without them, I will be 1,000 miles away. Lu Xuan was quite self-aware. In the pure and rich spiritual environment of the inner sect of the Heavenly Sword sect, his cultivation progress was so slow. If he stayed on the even worse Kangming Island, he might not make any progress in 3 years. The 3rd grade Wind and Thunder Sword Grass, Moon Rain Grass, 4th grade Mysterious Insect Vine, and Earth Fire Heart Lotus are not far from maturity. I must take them with me. I can't miss the light ball reward. Lu Xuan thought secretly, and took a look in the spiritual field. In the end, he chose to take the Demon Ghost Vine, Starlight Sword Grass, and Giant Kyanxio with him. The Demon Ghost Vine itself is a 5th grade one. Although it is still in the growth stage, it already has a certain combat power. If it is left on the mountain, he is worried that it will lose control and eat all the spiritual plants in the spiritual field. As for the two high-grade sword grasses, due to the special cultivation conditions, they need to be nourished and stimulated with corresponding sword energy day and night, so it is better to keep them with him. Cultivate it as soon as possible, and get more cultivation resources from the sword hall. He hesitated for a moment about the 3rd grade Mizan peach, and finally left it on the mountain, and used the formation to cover it. Although the Mizan peach has entered the mature stage, it is still a long way from full maturity. Moreover, due to the large size of the spiritual plant and the limited space in the life bag, it can only be left on the mountain. Among the remaining spiritual plants, the phoenix tree is still many years away from maturity. He left 2 red lotus flames, which are enough for it to grow for a while. In addition, the Tibetan yuan grass, the 5-element fruit, the magic sound bamboo, the newly planted sword raising gourd, etc. are all in the early stage of growth. In addition, the spiritual energy of the spiritual field can guarantee basic growth, so Lu Xuan left them in the cave. As for the spiritual beasts, he brought the cloud stepping lynx and the wind falcon. The fire dragon was too young, so he stayed in the mountain, leaving enough dried monster meat, and let the grass puppet take care of it. The spiritual energy in the small lake is rich. If the monster meat is eaten up, the spiritual spring can also be used to ensure normal growth. Let's stop by the courtyard in Jianmen Town by the way. He decided to go to the courtyard to see the growth of those spiritual plants from the underworld before leaving, whether they were mature, and which ones to take with him. Chapter 283, Thousands of Weird Faces. In the courtyard of Jianmen Town, Lu Xuan walked around the courtyard and found no signs of intrusion. He felt relieved and opened the Thousand Illusions cloud array and entered the courtyard. As soon as he entered, a cold breath hit him. There were gusts of cold wind in the courtyard, and the roars of various resentful souls could be heard from time to time. The air was filled with strong blood, like a scene from the underworld. I wonder how many of the remaining 4 ghost-faced stone mushrooms are fully mature. The last time I came to the courtyard, only 1 ghost-faced stone mushroom was fully mature, and I got an evil 4th grade magic weapon, the soul guiding lamp, from the light ball. Lu Xuan regarded himself as a righteous cultivator, so he naturally would not show such an evil magic weapon to his fellow disciples in the sect, and he had been hiding it deep in the storage bag. When he came to the 4 ghost-faced stone mushrooms, Lu Xuan focused his mind on the top of the plant with a strange face. 2 of them are fully mature. He was delighted. He carefully pulled out the ghost-faced stone mushroom. Without bothering to check the detailed information of the plant, he focused his attention on the light ball that quietly emerged on the ground. The white light ball flickered slightly. When gently touched, the light ball turned into countless light points, condensing into a vague and blurred face, which instantly flowed into Lu Xuan's body. Harvested a 3rd grade ghost-faced stone mushroom, and obtained the 4th grade magic weapon Qianzhen Weird Mask. A light grey mask as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. There were shallow lines on the mask, which kept changing, forming a series of strange faces, with dull expressions and resentment. Lu Xuan felt a strong cold breath coming from the part where his palm touched it, and his mind was focused on this evil mask. Qianzhen Weird Mask, a 4th grade magic weapon, was made by the 5th grade tiger-like monster companion ghost. After wearing it, the monk's face and breath can be changed with a thought, and it is integrated and difficult to detect. If worn for a long time, the mind may be affected by the residual soul of the ghost and gradually lose the self. I can replace it. A 4th grade auxiliary magic weapon, although its function is single, it is extremely powerful. Lu Xuan sighed secretly. In the cultivation world, although there are not many magic weapons that can conceal the body and breath, many cultivators can still obtain 1 or 2. It is extremely rare to completely change the face and breath. He put the almost imperceptible thickness of the 1000 chapter ghost face into the storage bag, and continued to pick another fully mature ghost-faced stone mushroom. Gently touch the white light ball that appeared. Countless light points condensed into a blurry face and instantly poured into his body. Harvest a 3rd grade ghost-faced stone mushroom, and obtain the 4th grade magic weapon soul guiding lamp. Or thought flashed through his mind, and then a strange lantern appeared in his hand. The lamp handle was shaped like a bone, and the pale lampshade seemed to be surrounded by human skin. Under the lamp holder, Countless slender dark red lamp tassels swayed gently in the cold wind, like countless entangled tiny tentacles. The pale candles in the center were densely packed with countless ghosts and resentments. Another 4th grade soul guiding lamp magic weapon. Lu Xuan was quite satisfied. The 4th grade soul guiding lamp can attract ghosts within a certain range, and it can also disturb the minds of monks and monsters, and make them lose their minds. The progress bar below the remaining 2 ghost-faced stone mushrooms is about to be full. In order to save some valuable greenwood source energy as much as possible, Lu Xuan is not in a hurry to ripen them. Not far away, the 3rd grade thornbone is also about to be fully mature. Lu Xuan decided to take it to the Sky Island. The 4th grade 100-eyed strangewood, dozens or hundreds of evil eyes have grown a lot. Lu Xuan hesitated for a moment, and finally chose to take it. Although the 100-eyed strangewood is a 4th grade, it is much smaller than the 3rd grade fairy peach. It can still fit in the bag. He didn't plan to take the remaining 5th grade holy infant fruit plants and blood evil flowers. Are you there? Explode some infant souls. Lu Xuan took the purple lightning sword and took the wooden infant out of the storage bag. He slightly untied the rune chain on it and said in a gentle tone. Muang looked at the dark purple flying sword in his hand, which was emitting lightning. The numbness caused by being bound by the rune chain for quite a long time disappeared instantly, and his small body shook involuntarily. Before Lu Xuan could say anything, the dark hole at the navel was filled with yin energy, and the pale souls of infants were squeezed out one by one. Okay, it's almost done. Lu Xuan looked at the increasing number of infant souls in the yard and stopped them. He estimated that these souls were enough for the holy infant fruit to enjoy for quite a long time, so he came to the blood flower. As soon as he took out the dragon essence blood from the storage bag, the hollow blood ball sensed the arrival of delicious food, and countless thin blood vessels on the surface squirmed slightly, trying to get as close to Lu Xuan as possible. Don't worry, I'll let you suck enough today. Lu Xuan poured the free 3rd grade dragon essence blood on the surface of the blood flower, feeling the excitement of the spiritual plant, causing the blood sea in the center to float and sink, and agitated endlessly. The blood-colored flower bloomed more brightly and dazzlingly. After feeding the holy infant fruit plant and blood flower, Lu Xuan left the courtyard, activated the 1000 illusions cloud smoke array, and moved the wind falcon out of the life bag. The wind falcon dragged its round belly, and a pair of green wings spread out, turning into a green light, rushing into the sky. As expected of the wind falcon, which is famous for its speed, although it has grown into a round ball, and is only a 2nd grade, but when it flies at full speed, its speed is not inferior to many 3rd grade flying swords. In the sky, green air currents emerged from the surface of the wind falcon's light green wings, carrying Lu Xuan, passing through the mountains like lightning. Hearing Lu Xuan's praise, the wind falcon chirped crisply, and its streamlined belly bulged. Lu Xuan had already obtained a map to Kangming Island from the Sutra Pavilion. For safety reasons, he deliberately chose the safest route, to avoid many secret realms that many other fellow disciples yearn for. After most of the day, Lu Xuan looked at the map in his hand, wondering what he was thinking. At this moment, the wind falcon had flown more than 6,000 miles, and did not deviate from the route designated by Lu Xuan. However, Lu Xuan's eyes were always on the left front of the map. There, a place name that he was very familiar with was marked. Liniang Fang City. Feng Xuan continued to fly rapidly, and familiar figures flashed through his mind. Zhang Hong, the neighbor who took good care of him like a kind brother. Zhang Xuan, who enthusiastically called him Uncle Lu every time they met, and Zhang Xuan, who killed monsters and earned spirit stones together, and He Guanxi, who bought the scattered spirit fireflies when he was most helpless. If you go there, you will probably have to go 2,000 or 3,000 miles more, and the distance is not marked. I don't know what risks may be hidden, but I haven't seen those old friends for many years. Lu Xuan thought to himself, and a certain emotion in his heart became stronger and stronger, almost bursting out. Turn around, go a little to the left, and take you to see where I used to live. His spiritual consciousness transmitted to Feng Xuan, and Feng Xuan chirped crisply, and flew a few points faster. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 280 For the Happiest Time. Linyang Market, Outer Area. Lu Xuan entered the market smoothly and walked slowly on the familiar streets. A 90% new first grade flying sword only costs 30 spirit stones. A big clearance sale of pills. Buy 10 and get 1 free. Fresh monster meat. Just caught from the secret realm. Slaughtered on the spot. On both sides of the street, in many stalls, the owners of the casual cultivators were trying their best to greet the passing cultivators. Various shouts entered Lu Xuan's ears, making his steps more cheerful. His eyes swept across the street, and many scenes that were sealed in the depths of his memory suddenly became vivid. Many shops he had visited before remained the same. Has the owner of this shop selling spirit beast cubs changed? He paused. In a familiar corner in front of his left, there was a shop that originally sold various first and second grade monster cubs and eggs. Now it has disappeared, replaced by a medicine hall. Lu Xuan still clearly remembered that after he started to harvest the white light balls, he passed the red-bearded carp and iron-clawed crab monsters in that shop. As he continued to go deeper into the alley, he couldn't help but feel homesick despite his state of mind at the foundation building stage. He took a deep breath and came to the small courtyard where he stayed at the beginning. Standing in front of the door, every brick and tile of the courtyard wall made him feel extremely familiar. His spiritual consciousness explored it very secretly. There were some simple arrangements in the house, but no one was at home. The more than half an acre of spiritual field in the backyard had been abandoned. There were several first-grade spiritual plants of different varieties, and their growth conditions were not very good. There were also many weeds growing in the spiritual field. It can be seen that the owner of the house was not good at spiritual plants. Lu Xuan looked at the weed-covered spiritual field across the courtyard wall. He seemed to see a handsome young man with low cultivation, who was diligently and meticulously cultivating the spiritual field, searching out the alien insect eggs in the soil inch by inch, and performing the spiritual rain technique with awkward movements, paying attention to the growth of the spiritual plants every day until the white light ball appeared. The place where the dream began. He sighed. Although I now have a mountain in the inner sect of Xianji insect, I can easily master spiritual plant techniques such as spiritual rain and wood growth, and plant a large number of rare spiritual plants of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. But my happiest time is when I'm at the 2nd level of key training, guarding this half-acre spiritual field, and cultivating the gradeless spiritual firefly grass. Lu Xuan sighed. He turned and came to the house where Zhang Han lived, and his spiritual consciousness subconsciously probed into it. When he was about to knock on the door, Lu Xuan's eyes condensed, and his expression was cold. According to his spiritual consciousness, there were 2 mid-level key training cultivators in the house, but they did not belong to Zhang Han, Zhang Ziyuan and Xuan. Based on his experience in the key training stage, casual cultivators in the market rarely change their residences. After all, casual cultivators have low cultivation and weak risk resistance. Accidents may occur during the move, so stability is the most important thing. Once you move away from your original residence, it means that there is a great possibility of changes, and most of them are bad situations. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness entered the house wantonly. Who? The cultivator inside asked in a rough voice. After a few breaths, the door opened, and a fierce-looking cultivator walked out, holding a first-grade flying sword in one hand and a few first-grade talismans in the other. The first time he saw Lu Xuan, the fierce-looking cultivator's spiritual consciousness swept over and instantly sensed the unfathomable aura of Lu Xuan. I didn't know that you were coming, and I'm sorry for not welcoming you. Please forgive me. The fierce cultivator restrained his expression as much as possible, squeezed out a kind smile, and said with lowered eyebrows. He had only felt the aura of the young man in front of him from a distance a few times in the market. It was exactly the same as those of the foundation building cultivators in the market, and even a little stronger. I have something to ask you. You'd better tell me the truth. If I find out that you are hiding something, you may not be able to bear the consequences. Lu Xuan asked directly. Excuse me, senior, I dare not hide anything. The fierce cultivator said quickly. Okay. Lu Xuan nodded. Let me ask you, how did you get this house? I bought it from a pawnbroker in the market. I have a deep impression of that pawnbroker. So, where did the original family who lived in the house go? I learned about it before I bought this house. It is said that the owner's son has a good aptitude and joined a small sect. In order to give his child a better training environment, the whole family moved to the vicinity of that small sect. The fierce monk considered and said word by word, fearing that he would make a mistake and cause Lu Xuan's anger. It turned out that the whole family moved for Xuan's future. I didn't expect that the little brat actually has some talent. Hearing the reason why Zhang Hang's family moved away, Lu Xuan felt relieved. Okay, you go back to the house. He glanced at the middle-aged monk with a fierce face, left a sentence, and the whole person turned into a floating light and disappeared from the monk's sight. Yes, senior, take care. The monk shouted loudly. He didn't sense Lu Xuan's breath for a long time, and then he was completely relieved. He exhaled deeply, wiped the fine beads of sweat that had oozed out of his forehead at some point, and was terrified. I didn't expect that the few casual cultivators in this house actually knew a foundation building master. Fortunately, the origin of the house is fair and square, otherwise. Thinking of the possible results, the cultivator was still in fear and was extremely fortunate that he did not make enemies with the original owner of the house. He really joined a small sect. After a while, Lu Xuan's figure quietly emerged and his tone was half happy and half regretful. He was happy that Zhang Xuan had a decent talent and was able to successfully enter a sect and had the opportunity to change his fate of cultivation. As for regret, it was naturally that he could not meet Zhang Hang's family who trusted and helped each other on this trip. During the moment he disappeared, he asked several old casual cultivators living nearby and learned that Zhang Xuan had indeed joined a small sect, and he was completely relieved. During the conversation, he learned that the small sect was thousands of miles away from Lanyang Market, and the road was not very safe. In addition, it might not be found in a short time, so Lu Xuan had to give up the idea of visiting. I don't know when I can see him again. He sighed. He was cautious by nature, and because of the spiritual field light group, he didn't need to go out to look for opportunities. He had been in Xianjian sect for 7 or 8 years before he had this opportunity to go out. I don't know when I will go out next time. Lu Xuan looked at the Zhang family's house and seemed to see a silly child standing behind a couple of casual cultivators, calling him Uncle Lu affectionately. He quickly adjusted his mentality and headed to the central area of the town. I haven't seen you for so many years, and I don't know how Mr. He is doing now. The figure of a thin old man flashed through his mind, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 285 Perfect quality cannot guarantee quality. Beikao Tang. The wide hall was filled with the aroma of medicine. More than a dozen medicine boys were concentrating on processing various spiritual plants. Among them, a thin old man was particularly conspicuous. Manager He, these spiritual fireflies were just purchased today. Please help to process them. There is an alchemist who is in urgent need of them in the afternoon. A middle-aged man walked up to the thin old man with a large pile of spiritual fireflies and put them down. Okay. The thin old man looked at the large number of spiritual fireflies, gritted his teeth, and responded. After bending over to process the herbs for nearly an hour, Manager He supported his waist and stood up with difficulty. With his physique at the 4th level of key training, this situation would not usually happen. It's just that he is now old and his physical functions are not as good as when he was young and strong. In addition, he had several hidden diseases in the past, and he bent over to process spiritual medicine for so long, so he was in unbearable pain all of a sudden. As the manager of Beikao Tang, he shouldn't deal with these trivial matters, but he is just a distant relative of the He family. A few years ago, the backer behind him lost power, which affected his position in the medicine hall. In the past, he only had to collect spiritual plants and count the accounts, but now he has to help deal with the herbs. In comparison, he is much busier. However, the thin old man is very satisfied with his current situation. There are so many old casual cultivators living in poverty in the market. It is quite good for him to have a stable place without worrying about being hurt, and to earn some spiritual stones for his family. Just thinking about it, a teenager who walked into the medicine hall caught the attention of the thin old man. The boy's cultivation level is only the first level of key training, and his expression is timid. He holds a dozen spiritual firefly grass tightly in his hand. With the old man's decades of experience in identifying spiritual herbs, he can see at a glance that the quality of the spiritual firefly grass is very ordinary. He came to the front desk, spread out the spiritual plants in his hand, and asked the middle-aged cultivator if he could buy these spiritual fireflies. "Go away, we don't accept spiritual plants from idle people," the middle-aged man scolded impatiently, waving his hand to signal the young man to leave quickly. "Fellow Daoist, please, I can sell it at a lower price." There was a hint of begging in the young man's tone. "Lower? How about 2 spiritual stones per plant?" A hint of teasing flashed in the middle-aged monk's eyes. 2 spiritual stones? The young man couldn't help but shake his body. This was half lower than the normal purchase price, far below his psychological expectations. He bit his lips tightly and was in a dilemma for a while. He wanted to sell the spiritual herbs to earn some spiritual stones, but he really couldn't accept the price proposed by the middle-aged monk. "Manager He Yang, this kid looks a little pitiful. Why don't you lower the price a little and buy his spiritual plants, just as a good relationship?" The thin old man saw a familiar figure in the young man. About 10 years ago, there was a young man of similar age and situation, standing in front of him stubbornly and firmly, selling the ordinary quality spiritual firefly grass in his hand over and over again. In a trance, 2 figures overlapped, making him feel like traveling through time. "Mr. He, there are so many cooperating spiritual plant masters in Baikotang, and various spiritual plants can be supplied in large quantities and steadily. This person is just a small casual cultivator with unknown origins, and the quality of the spiritual firefly grass in his hands cannot be guaranteed. Why does he still want to buy these scattered spiritual plants?" The middle-aged man snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Price according to quality and quantity. So what if you buy it?" The thin old man couldn't help but get a little more angry after hearing what the middle-aged cultivator said. "You are so generous, you accept it. Okay, I will accept it. Come here, kid, give me your spiritual firefly grass, and I will buy it at the normal price." The thin old man greeted the uneasy boy. "Mr. He, let me be frank. Without my consent, you cannot use the spiritual stones in the hall to buy these firefly grasses. I'll keep them for my own use," the thin old man said casually. His grandson had recently entered the hall and was trying to refine pills. Buying these 10 or so firefly grasses would allow him to practice. The young man handed the firefly grasses to the thin old man and took the more than 30 spiritual stones handed over by the old man. The quality of these firefly grasses is basically ordinary, and there are even 1 or 2 that are almost defective. "Do you have any objection to the price I offer?" The thin old man arranged the quality of the spiritual plants one by one and asked the young man. No, I'm very grateful that you can accept them." The young man put the spiritual stones deep into his lapel and said with gratitude. He knew the spiritual plants he cultivated, and he was quite satisfied to get these spiritual stones. With them, he could continue to buy spiritual seeds, and there would be some left for cultivation and living. "Old man, you are so kind. I also have a few Lingian grass here. I was lucky enough to grow them to perfect quality. How about giving them to you to buy?" At this time, a gentle voice sounded in the lobby. A handsome young man with extraordinary demeanor and slender figure walked into Baikotang calmly, holding a few fluorescent plants in his hand. The plants were full of spiritual energy, and the fluorescent light seemed to be dotted with countless stars in the night sky. "Perfect quality Lingian grass?" The middle-aged monk rushed out in an instant, with a flattering smile on his face. "Dao, please come this way. Our Baikotang has an excellent reputation in Linayang market. As long as we are sure that the Lingian grass in your hand is really of perfect quality, we will definitely give you a satisfactory purchase price." He suppressed his inner excitement and respectfully brought a cup of steaming spiritual tea and handed it to the handsome young man. Perfect quality herbs, even if they are low grade, are extremely important to alchemists. They can improve the success rate and quality of alchemy. There are so many spiritual plant masters in the Baikao Hall, and only with great luck can one grow a perfect quality Lingian grass. If one can get all the perfect quality Lingian grass from the young man and hand them over to the alchemists in the hall, then he will definitely be able to please them, and his status may be further improved. Really? The handsome young man looked at the middle-aged cultivator with interest. However, I'm just a small casual cultivator with unknown origins. I have a few scattered Lingian grass in my hand. Although they are of perfect quality, the quality cannot be guaranteed. So, it is better to give them to this old man to purchase. The handsome young man is naturally Xuan. He saw this scene in Baikao Hall, and made the move just now. As for the perfect quality Lingian grass, although it is no longer possible to get enough cultivation rewards, the focus is on the second grade water firefly grass, but there are many spiritual seeds left before. In the inner sect spiritual environment, some perfect quality Lingian grass can be easily cultivated. Xuan? The thin old man asked in a disbelieving voice. The last time they met was 7 or 8 years ago. In addition, Xuan's cultivation and temperament had changed greatly, so the old man didn't dare to recognize him for a while. Yes, Mr. He, it's me. I came back to visit you. Xuan raised his mouth and said gently. Recommend a friend's book, family, beast control, farming. Please move to see it. There is a through train below. Chapter 286 Chapter 285 Stay Order. Where have you been all these years? I haven't seen you since I came back from the new secret realm. I thought something happened to you. The thin old man trembled slightly. He had always treated Xuan as his son or nephew. After his sudden disappearance, he couldn't calm down for a long time. I was spotted by a disciple of a large sect in the secret realm, and I had the opportunity to join the sect. In addition, there was an accident of an evil sneak attack in the secret realm. In order to stay away from the vortex of the Xuan family, I hurried to the sect. Xuan felt the strong concern in the old man's tone, and said with a hint of apology. His keen spiritual sense detected a fluctuation, and immediately said to the thin old man, let's go to another place, to reminisce about the past. It's a bit noisy here. That's him. He brought spiritual plants to Baikao Tang to make trouble. Get him out. The arrogant middle-aged cultivator walked into the hall with 2 high-level key training cultivators. After hearing Xuan's words, he immediately understood that Xuan was teasing him. In anger, he went to call over the 2 high-level key training monks who were maintaining the order of Baikao Tang to prevent anyone from making trouble. Xuan looked at the 2 people rushing towards him and snorted coldly. Then, the spiritual energy in his body surged, and a cold snow-white sword energy shot out from his fingertips. The sword energy was like a thread, circling around the 2 high-level key training monks and the middle-aged monk. The 3 of them suddenly felt that countless tiny cold sword energy penetrated their skin, and seeped into their blood, bones, and flesh. The cold air was pervasive, and the whole body seemed to be frozen, moving slowly, and a thin layer of frost appeared on the skin and hair. However, what was colder than the blood and bones was the hearts of the 3 people. The 3 of them had lived in the market for decades. If nothing else, their eyesight was still good. The equally cold sea of consciousness immediately understood what Xuan's move meant. A simple sword energy made the 2 high-level key training monks lose most of their mobility, which means that Xuan is several levels higher than them in terms of sword comprehension and cultivation. There is only one possibility, that the handsome young man in front of them is a foundation building monk. Thinking of this, the 3 people were all shocked. I will give you a slight punishment, and you can resolve it yourself. Xuan said casually, taking Hileo and leaving Baikao Tang. The sword energy he casually displayed was the winter snow sword, meaning in the 4-seasoned sword art. Under exquisite control, it froze the blood of the 3 people. It must be resolved with relevant elixirs or talismans, otherwise it will leave hidden dangers. As the manager of Baikao Tang, the thin old man has a large house in the central area of the town, although his status is not as good as before. Xuan, have you achieved foundation building? Hileo took a few deep breaths and asked tentatively. He knew the details of the 2 guards very well. Xuan subdued the 2 so easily with one move, which could only be done by the cultivation of the foundation building realm. Yes, I'm now a foundation building master. How is it? Is this surprise okay? Xuan regained some of his youthful nature in front of the thin old man, winking and saying, you have already built your foundation, but you are still not in good shape. His action made the thin old man feel much more intimate, as if he had returned to the past, and he couldn't help but laugh and scold. However, your surprise is really extraordinary, and it makes my heart a little bit uncomfortable. The old man patted his chest and said he really couldn't imagine that the poor and destitute second level key training little casual cultivator had become a high ranking foundation building master. The contrast between the two is really too great. You know, Baikeotang is one of the major forces in Linyangfang City, and the highest level alchemy master is also in the foundation building realm. In other words, this unreliable young man in front of him is actually on par with the alchemy master of Baikeotang that he usually looks up to. Seeing the thin old man unable to calm down for a long time, Lu Xuan chuckled. Mr. He, do you still remember what happened after you introduced me to Baikeotang and established a cooperative relationship? Somehow, I suddenly found that I had a good talent in cultivating spiritual plants, as if I was born to feel the vitality of spiritual plants. Lu Xuan fell into memories. The thin old man nodded in agreement, and he was deeply impressed by these. The batches of Lingyiang grass that Lu Xuan brought over were of higher and higher quality, so he took Lu Xuan's hand and let Baikeotang establish a relatively free cooperation. Later, Lu Xuan even cultivated Lingyiang grass of perfect quality, and when the evil spirits invaded the market and caused a large number of spiritual plants to be contaminated, he even rescued those diseased spiritual plants, and the two of them made a lot of money from it. At that time, because of his meritorious service in recommending Lu Xuan, he received a lot of praise in Baikeotang. Later, I met a cultivator from a large sect in the secret realm. He found that I cultivated a unique spiritual plant in the sect, so he gave me an opportunity to join the sect. With this opportunity, I successfully entered the sect, and then I walked step by step to the present. Lu Xuan continued. Thank you for your hard work over the years, the thin old man said in a heavy tone. He could imagine that Lu Xuan had encountered countless difficulties and obstacles along the way, as he had grown from a casual cultivator with no background to a foundation building cultivator in less than 10 years. It's not hard. Lu Xuan shook his head and denied it. I just practiced hard day and night, worked hard to cultivate spiritual plants, and exchanged all of them for elixirs that improved my cultivation, and then I was lucky enough to break through to the foundation building realm. He described himself as very hardworking and diligent. The thin old man thought that he only reported good news and not bad news, and made a big deal out of all the difficulties he encountered, and kept saying. He made Lu Xuan doubt himself a little bit. The two kept chatting about the past, and when they were excited, they laughed or sighed. Half a day later, Lu Xuan saw that it was getting late, so he got up and said goodbye to the thin old man. Mr. He, I came out this time to complete a mission for the sect. I missed you, so I came to visit you. Now, it's time to leave. Here are a few small gifts that should be of some use to you or your descendants. This spiritual fruit can improve physical fitness, but the medicinal properties are too strong. With your intermediate level of key training, Mr. He, you can't eat too much at one time. This bead is called the explosive flame bead. It can instantly burst out a large range of scorching flames. If you encounter danger, you can directly knock it out. And this talisman is called the purifying spirit talisman. If you encounter evil spirits, you can purify and dispel them. It has powerful damage to evil spirits of the weird level. Finally, this token is called the Kingayan token. Holding this token can save you a lot of trouble when you join the Xianjian sect, and it increases the possibility of success. If there are outstanding talents among your descendants, you can take this token to the Xianjian sect. As Lu Xuan spoke, a red stone bead, a talisman as white as jade, a spiritual fruit wrapped in layers of jade skin, and a light green token floated towards the thin old man. Chapter 287 Deterrence. You can't do that. The thin old man kept waving his hands to refuse, his attitude firm. You are just a casual cultivator, your foundation is not stable, and your status in that kind of big sect is probably average. It's better to keep these treasures to improve your own strength. As the manager of Baikeotang, he came into contact with many cultivators who sold spiritual plants. Naturally, his vision was extraordinary. He saw at a glance that these things of Lu Xuan were extraordinary. Whether it was stone beads, talismans, or spiritual fruits. They all exuded a strong spiritual energy. They were probably treasures of the 3rd grade. The token was even more precious. For a cultivator from a small family or a casual cultivator, holding this token would have a chance to change their fate. Mr. He, please accept it. These things are not too expensive for me. You should know me. I can argue with you for a long time, just for a broken spirit. If it was really precious, how could I be willing to give it to you? A smile appeared on Lu Xuan's face. The explosive flame pearls were the rewards from the light balls of the fiery flame fruits. At that time, he had planted 10 fiery flame fruits, and more than 10 explosive flame pearls were produced. He had never had the opportunity to use the 3rd grade pure spirit talisman, and he also kept several of them. Although there were only a few jade scale fruits left, they were the most suitable for the old man's current state. As for the Blue Cloud Order, each and a disciple had one. Zhang Ziyuan had already joined another sect, so it would be a waste for Lu Xuan to keep it, so he planned to give it to Steward He. In his eyes, these things were nothing compared to the kindness the old man had shown him. When he was still a small casual cultivator at the 2nd level of key training, the firefly grass he cultivated was cruelly rejected again and again when it was sold because of its average quality and quantity. In the end, it was purchased by the old man at a normal price, allowing him to survive in the market. Later, he introduced himself to the herb hall and provided him with various spiritual seeds, which enabled him to enter a stage of rapid growth. When the spiritual plants were diseased, he was the one who made the connection and found many spiritual plant masters, from which he earned a lot of spiritual stones. It can be said that Steward He played a crucial role in his early cultivation. That's right. The thin old man recalled how Lu Xuan had been haggling over a few broken spirits, and laughed. Then I'll obey your orders and accept them. He bowed and said to Lu Xuan solemnly, okay, Mr. He, I'm leaving now. See you again if we are lucky. A trace of disappointment flashed in Lu Xuan's eyes, and he said with a fist. Then, under the gaze of the thin old man, he drove the wind falcon and rushed into the sky. Dao Iao Lu, please stay. The wind falcon flew less than 100 miles, and a steady voice came from behind Lu Xuan. Turning around, he saw an old man driving a flying sword and running towards him at a high speed. I'm He Yunzang. I built Beikao Tang and Linayang Market. Today I know that fellow Daoist Lu is passing by here. Why don't we go back to the market and have a drink? In addition, I have punished those blind clansmen in Beikao Tang just now. If there is any inconvenience, please forgive me, fellow Daoist Lu. The old man has white hair, but his face is very ruddy. He is also in the early stage of foundation building. So it's Master He. I have heard of your name for a long time. Lu Xuan glanced at the old man. After he established a cooperative relationship with Beikao Tang, he was naturally very familiar with this famous alchemy master in the market, but he had the chance to meet him until today. I didn't take that little thing just now to heart, and Master He doesn't have to mind it. I came here this time because I have a sect mission. The reason I came to Linayang Market is just to visit an old friend, and I will not go back to the market. Lu Xuan said calmly. I wonder which sect fellow Daoist Lu came from? The white-haired old man asked curiously. Lu Xuan raised his lips, and a black nameplate appeared in his hand. On the nameplate were countless swords of all sizes, floating up and down, as if they would shoot out from the inside at any time. This token, could it be from the Xianjian sect? He Yunzang looked at the Xianjian sect identity nameplate in Lu Xuan's hand, thought for a moment, and immediately knew its origin, and said with half surprise and half fear. After he learned that there was a foundation building cultivator coming to Beikao Tang, he quickly understood some information about Lu Xuan. He even knew about Lu Xuan's experience of working with Beikao Tang as a spiritual plant master. After knowing this, he had the idea of getting to know Lu Xuan, and quickly rushed to the house of Manager He, but came up empty-handed, and then tried to intercept Lu Xuan with all his strength. But Lu Xuan's identity was far beyond his imagination. He was actually a disciple of the Xianjian sect, which was famous in the cultivation world. It can be said that there is a world of difference between ordinary foundation building cultivators and those from large sects. Thinking of this, he suddenly became 2 inches shorter. I'm indeed lucky to become an inner disciple of the Xianjian sect, Lu Xuan said truthfully. By the way, Fellow Daoist, the steward of your hall is a good friend of mine regardless of age difference. Please take care of him. I will come back to visit my old friend from time to time in the future. I hope he will not encounter any accidents. There was a hint of threat in Lu Xuan's tone. That's right. Steward, he is also a member of my He family. Naturally, I will treat him as my own child and will not let him be bullied or hurt. After learning that Lu Xuan was a disciple of the Xianjian sect, the white-haired old man's attention to him increased by several levels and he hurriedly promised. He secretly decided to take good care of Steward in every detail and try to get in touch with Lu Xuan from him. Although he was one of the few foundation building masters in Linyang Market and had a respected status, there was an undercurrent under the surface. He didn't have many years left to live. Now he could barely maintain Baikao Tang, but once he passed away decades later, it was conceivable that Baikao Tang would be cannibalized and swallowed by other forces. The appearance of Lu Xuan gave him a glimmer of hope. That's good. Lu Xuan nodded. Before leaving, he repeatedly told the thin old man to keep the gift he gave him. Even if it was a close relative, he could not let them know about it at will. With the treasure protecting him and Yunzong's promise, the personal safety of manager he can be said to be guaranteed to the greatest extent. He did not return to Linyang Market with the white-haired old man again. After a few words, he said goodbye and left. As for the Wang family in charge of the market, although they were a bit strong, when they invited him to enter the secret realm, they did not lose much interest to Lu Xuan. He even got the ghost-faced stone mushroom and the Yangtze sword sheath. Therefore, he adhered to the idea that it was better to have less trouble than more, and did not take the initiative to contact them. He was satisfied to meet Manager He smoothly. This is the end of the trip. It's time to go to the Boundless Sea to complete the garrison mission. I wonder what strange seaweed and sea beasts I will see. After repaying Manager his past kindness, Lu Xuan felt extremely happy in his heart and passed on a thought to Feng Falcon under his seat. The falcon let out a crisp cry, then turned into a streak of green light and flew rapidly through the mountains. Chapter 288 Mermaids, a new training direction. Thousands of feet high in the sky, the wind falcon flapped its broad light blue wings, maintaining its shape in the raging wind. Lu Xuan stood on its back, overlooking the area below. There were many islands of different sizes, and the sea surface extended along with the islands, boundless, with a magnificent beauty under the golden sunlight. Finally arrived at Kangming Island, Lu Xuan muttered to himself as he looked at a large island below that was at the forefront of the archipelago. After leaving Linyang Market, he did not go anywhere else. Following the route designated by the sect, he arrived near Kangming Island in 2 days. He put away the wind falcon and slowly landed on Kangming Island. Kangming Island stretches for hundreds of miles, with many rugged rocks on the island. Only in the center of the island do many monks and mortals live. Lu Xuan walked on the bluestone street. From time to time, the sea breeze blew, and there was a faint salty smell in the coolness. There were many cultivators on the street, mostly low-level key training cultivators. Occasionally, 1 or 2 mid-level key training cultivators were seen, but no higher-level cultivators were seen. The cultivators on the island were obviously different from those in Linyang Market. They were dressed in rough and wild clothes, and their exposed skin was tanned and shiny. There were many stalls on both sides of the street, and the goods on them were also very unique. Daoao, come and have a look. There are a lot of silver algae, freshly picked from the nearby sea. It only costs 3 spirit stones per pound. A dark-skinned young man next to him saw Lu Xuan looking at the things on his stall, and greeted him enthusiastically. On his stall, there was a pile of silver seaweed, which still had a moist smell, like a large ball of wet silver hair. What is this silver algae used for? Lu Xuan grabbed a ball of silver algae and asked curiously. After being air-dried and crushed, it can be used as a material for refining many elixirs. I see, but I don't need it at the moment. Lu Xuan declined and continued to wander on the street. Not only spiritual plants, but also the monster materials, magic tools, and talismans on the stalls are unique. Many monster materials come from the sea, including fish, turtles, and sea beasts of various shapes, almost all of which contain rich water spiritual power. Magic tools and talismans are also closely related to the sea. Lu Xuan saw many water controlling magic tools and talismans. While strolling, Lu Xuan suddenly stopped in front of a stall. On the stall, 2 dying sea beasts were locked. The sea beasts have strange shapes, and their lower bodies are not much different from those of sea fish. They have dense blue-black scales and a pair of short webbed feet. What surprised Lu Xuan a little was that the upper body of the sea beast in front of him was somewhat similar to that of humans. The pupils were green, the nose was flat, and many sharp teeth protruded from the lips. From time to time, light green saliva dripped onto the ground, and a fishy smell came to his face. Although it looked extremely ferocious, its facial features had obvious human traces. "Excuse me, fellow Daoist, what is the origin of this sea beast?" The stall owner was a sturdy man with a long scar on his face like a centipede, revealing his fierce appearance. "Fellow Daoist, this is a mermaid, living in the deep sea. These 2 were obtained by my companions and I after much trouble. They can be used for taming, or we can directly obtain a variety of materials from them." The sturdy man secretly probed Lu Xuan's breath, and his spiritual consciousness seemed to be deeply trapped in the vortex. He knew that he had hit a wall, and the centipede scar on his face shook unconsciously twice, and he smiled and said, "Mermaids, why are they somewhat similar to humans?" Lu Xuan suppressed the urge to try to feed the mermaids, and continued to ask, "Legend has it that there is a kind of mermaid beast in the deep sea, which lures monks into traps, forces them to mate, and finally gives birth to such a monster that is neither human nor beast." The stall owner pondered for a moment and explained to Lu Xuan, "Interspecies mating, breaking through reproductive isolation." Lu Xuan thought subconsciously, what kind of offspring will be produced after different species and different bloodlines of demon beasts mate with each other? He seemed to have discovered a new direction of cultivation. When cultivating spiritual plants, there are ways to induce spiritual seeds and change the growth environment of spiritual plants, which can cause them to mutate. If you want to change the bloodline of spiritual beasts, it seems that you can consider hybridization of spiritual beasts. Lu Xuan thought secretly and decided that he might experiment if he had the chance. The possibility of spiritual beasts of different bloodlines mating to give birth to offspring is almost zero, and there are many dangers in the process. However, Lu Xuan can grasp the detailed status of spiritual beasts, and he must be able to make corresponding adjustments at any time to greatly increase the success rate. He continued to stroll on the street for a while, and came to the central area of Kangming Island. "Tell your island master that someone from the Xianjian sect is coming," Lu Xuan said to a gatekeeper monk in front of magnificent building. "Xianjian sect? Yes, I'll go right away." The gatekeeper monk was stunned at first, but immediately reacted and crawled into the building. Soon, there was a sound of chickens and dogs flying, and dogs clamoring in the building, and immediately, a large group of monks hurried out. "I didn't know you were coming, and I'm sorry for not welcoming you from afar. Please forgive me." The leader was a chaste monk with pale cheeks, who was at a high level of key training. When he saw Lu Xuan, and felt the spiritual power fluctuations of his foundation building realm, he immediately believed him, and bowed deeply to greet him. The more than 10 or 20 people behind him also bowed respectfully. "Are you here, Song Yu, the island master of Kangming Island?" Before Lu Xuan came over, he learned a little about Kangming Island, and knew that Kangming Island was run by a small family with the surname Song, and the island master was named Song Yu. "It's me. May I know how you are?" Song Yu glanced at Lu Xuan, and saw the unique identity nameplate of the inner disciples of the Xianjian sect that he took out, and asked solemnly, "Lu Xuan, but I heard that your Song family has some connection with the Xianjian sect. You can just call me uncle. There's no need to be so distant." "Yes, Uncle Lu, please come in." The chaste monk welcomed Lu Xuan into the majestic building. There are many small families like the Song family, most of which were established by the disciples of the Xianjian sect who were exposed. Many outer disciples had no hope of breakthroughs, and failed to advance to the foundation building stage many times. Disillusioned, they left the sect and spread out. Therefore, the families established have a close connection with the sect, relying on the sect, guarding a certain place for the sect, and providing various alchemy and equipment resources for cultivation, each taking what they need. When Lu Xuan was still in the key training stage, he went to solve an insect pest problem once, and that small family was in the above situation. The Song family is the same, but its power is much greater. During the handover period, how is the situation on the island? Did the calming spirit fish encounter any major accidents? Lu Xuan walked in front and asked Song Yu, who was one body behind him. Everything is normal. The previous Uncle Master made careful arrangements before leaving. Although there is no Uncle Master who has built a foundation on the island during this period, it is quite peaceful. There were 2 waves of poaching by small sea beasts in the offshore area, where the calming spirit fish are raised, but we repelled them all, and not a single fish was stolen. Song Yu lowered his head and answered respectfully. Chapter 289, Not Loving Beauty, Loving Farming. As long as there are no abnormalities. Lu Xuan nodded lightly. He wished he could spend these 3 years in peace. I'm new here, and I'm not very familiar with the surrounding islands and sea areas. I would like to ask Lord Song to introduce the situation to me in detail, especially the surrounding Foundation establishment monks, or the 3rd level monsters that often haunt this sea area. Foundation establishment monks. The elegant monk frowned and thought. There are not many foundation building monks in the many islands around. There are not even one on many islands. There are several large islands. The situation is somewhat similar to Kangming Island. They are actually controlled by large sects. There are some cultivators with the master uncle. In addition, there are 2 or 3 small sects built on other islands. Each sect has no less than 1 foundation building monk and several independent families. There are shadows of foundation building masters behind the scenes, Song Yu said in detail. In addition, it is said that some people have seen traces of foundation building monks on some remote islands. They should have come to this island to avoid their enemies. As for Kangming Island, the one who is always on the island now is Uncle Lu. The elegant monk didn't know what he thought of, and showed an expression of relief. During this period of time, although no accidents occurred, he and the entire Song family had been tense, fearing that the calming spirit fish they raised would suffer heavy losses. When Lu Xuan arrived, he felt extremely at ease as he had a well-known and upright foundation building monk in charge. When Lu Xuan sat down, various spiritual teas and spiritual fruits were soon presented to him. After chatting for a while, various dishes made from spiritual fish were served. Uncle Lu, this is the calming spirit fish that has a good reputation in the spiritual world. Due to the special terrain, it is a specialty of Kangming Island. Please try it, Uncle Master. Lu Xuan lowered his head and saw a steamed spirit fish in front of him. It is extremely simple and ensures the deliciousness of the meat to the greatest extent. The fish meat was so white that it was almost transparent, glowing with crystal light. It melted in your mouth, and a strong umami flavor flowed through Lu Xuan's limbs and bones. Immediately, every meridian, bone, and flesh in his body seemed to be wrapped by a warm current, giving him a feeling of excitement. A feeling of inner comfort and comfort. In addition, there are braised spiritual fish soup, etc. Different cooking methods have their own unique tastes, giving Lu Xuan a satisfying meal and endless aftertaste. Yes, it is indeed the calming spirit fish. The fish lives up to its name. Lu Xuan ate happily and praised it repeatedly. After drinking and eating, Lu Xuan went to a private room arranged by Song Yu to rest. Just when he was about to check the condition of the spiritual plants in the raw bag, there was a knock on the door, and Song Yu came over with a handsome young man and 2 pretty girls. The boy's childishness was still there, and he looked at Lu Xuan with half admiration and half curiosity in his eyes. One of the 2 girls is charming and enchanting, the other is fresh and pleasant, with low eyebrows and pleasing eyes. Each is holding a beautiful wooden box. The wooden box is heavy, and it is unknown what is inside. Island Master Song, who is this? Uncle Lu came to this remote island alone. I was afraid that you might not be used to it, so I sent 2 maids for you to use as you please. The elegant monk said with a flattering smile. That's not necessary. Lu Xuan refused directly. I appreciate Island Master Song's kindness, but I'm used to being a loner and don't like people disturbing my life. Please take these 2 girls back with you. Then you 2 just listen to Uncle Lu. Put down the box and step aside for now. The 2 girls gently put down the wooden box and slowly exited the room. The boxes are filled with specialties from Kangming Island. The fish eggs laid by the Kangming spirit fish have been treated with special methods. They taste delicious and have an effect similar to the spirit enhancing pill, which can enhance the monk's spiritual power. Song Yu opened the wooden box, and there was a layer of shriveled fish eggs the size of a fingertip spread on the outermost surface. They were milky white and filled with a faint spiritual power. Lu Xuan's eyes condensed, and his spiritual sense noticed that there was something mysterious underneath the fish eggs. Except for the shallow layer of fish eggs on the top, there were actually spiritual stones underneath. A smile appeared on his lips. I have accepted Island Lord Song's specialties. But what should I call this little Taoist friend? He roughly guessed the purpose of Song Yu bringing this handsome young man here, and asked proactively. This is Song Yun, my incompetent son. His talent is pretty good. He is only 16 years old and already has the 5th level of key training. Song Yun, I haven't met Senior Lu yet. Senior Lu. The handsome young man immediately greeted him respectfully. Not bad. Lu Xuan praised him. At the young man's age, he was only a small casual cultivator on the 2nd level of key training. The young man did have a good talent among his peers. You have an intermediate level of key training at a young age, and you have a lot of hope to join the sect. Let's do this. If I have free time in the future, I will have the opportunity to give you some advice and help you avoid going astray. Lu Xuan Wenwen said that he was able to get to where he is today. Although the light group reward took the absolute credit, after all, he practiced high-grade skills such as the Great 5-element Kung Fu, studied swordsmanship, used it to cultivate sword grass, and absorbed several with a sword intent experience pack. It's easy to give guidance to mid-level monks in key training. Thank you very much, Uncle Lu. Song Yu smiled and kicked Song Yun who was standing there. This time he came with 2 maids and many spiritual stones. In addition to pleasing Lu Xuan, he also wanted Lu Xuan to give Song Yun some guidance. Unexpectedly, Lu Xuan offered to let him have spiritual stones that were not in vain. Feel. One-on-one sessions between Foundation establishment monks are much more cost-effective than large-scale teaching by small island sects. It doesn't matter if you spend more spiritual stones. By the way, Island Master Song, is there any place on the island where the spiritual energy is relatively abundant and the soil is fertile enough? I want to use it to grow spiritual plants. Finding a piece of land to grow spiritual plants? Song Yu didn't hesitate. Come to think of it, as a foundation building monk, when you came to this remote and desolate island, your first thought was to find a piece of land to cultivate spiritual plants? Uncle Master means. He kept thinking in his mind, but still couldn't guess what Lu Xuan was thinking. It doesn't mean anything else. It's just farming in the literal sense. I don't have any other hobbies. I only like to grow flowers and plants, cultivate spiritual plants, and nourish my mind at the same time. Lu Xuanfeng said lightly, if we don't find a suitable spiritual field, the many spiritual plants in the living bag will be affected. After all, the raw bag is only a 3rd grade treasure. Although it can maintain the vitality of spiritual plants and slow down their loss of vitality, the effect on 3rd grade or even 4th grade spiritual plants is not that obvious. Over a long period of time, it may cause damage to the spiritual plants and affect their quality. This affects the light group reward after maturity. This was something Lu Xuan couldn't bear. Therefore, as soon as Fang entered Kangming Island, his first thought was to find a suitable spiritual field and transplant the spiritual plants in the living bag. I will find a suitable spiritual field for my uncle. Song Yu was keenly aware of the urgency in Lu Xuan's heart and said immediately. He brought 2 carefully selected maids with different characteristics. He originally thought that he could please Lu Xuan, but he didn't expect that the uncle in front of him did not like beauties and loved farming. Could it be that this is what uncle can do at such a young age? The reason for breaking through to foundation building? With this absurd thought, he hurriedly left with Song Yun. Chapter 290 Thornbone Maturity. Although Lu Xuan's request seemed a bit absurd, Song Yu found a suitable location very quickly. The next day, Song Yun came early and took Lu Xuan to the spiritual field, found by the Song family. The spiritual field is not far from the center of Kangming Island, with an area of 6 or 7 acres, which is much smaller than the inner sect mountain. Senior Lu, this spiritual field was originally occupied by a high-level key training cultivator from Kangming Island. After learning about your needs, our Song family bought it at a premium, and the cultivator moved out overnight. Seeing Lu Xuan looking at the spiritual field renovated by the spiritual soil, Song Yun hurriedly explained. There is no forced buying or selling, right? Lu Xuan looked around. Absolutely not. The cultivator opened up this spiritual field just to earn some spiritual stones. The spiritual stones we offered were enough, and he agreed without thinking for long. The Song family knew that Lu Xuan came from a famous and authentic family, and at least they would not allow dirty behavior to appear on the surface, so they would rather spend more spiritual stones than make Lu Xuan unhappy. These spiritual fields are surrounded by spirit gathering formations, which are suitable for seniors to cultivate spiritual plants. In addition, we keep in mind your request. There is a stone cliff behind the courtyard, and there is a tributary of earth fire underneath. Song Yun introduced the situation of the spiritual fields in detail. Lu Xuan nodded. Considering the growth requirements of the 4th grade Earth Fire Heart Lotus, when he asked the Song family to find spiritual fields, he specifically asked them to find spiritual fields with earth fire around them. Kangming Island itself is an island, and there are occasional strange fires. It is not difficult to find earth fire. You are thoughtful, Lu Xuan said to Song Yun with a smile. Although the spiritual energy of the spiritual field is far inferior to the cave in the Xiangji insect, it is much stronger than the spiritual field in Linyang Market. He is already satisfied to find this spiritual field on such a bitter and cold island. As long as you are satisfied. Lu Xuan's casual praise made Song Yun flattered, and an irrepressible joy appeared on his face. Finally, I can release the treasures in the Sheng Sheng bag. After Song Yun left, Lu Xuan set up a simple formation and immediately opened the Sheng Sheng bag. The first to jump out was the plump wind falcon, flapping its light blue wings constantly, and it was obvious that it was a little uncomfortable staying inside. The cloud stepping lynx stepped gracefully and jumped out of the life bag. Its green pupils scanned the surroundings, and the 2 tufts of grey hair on the tips of its ears turned around very vigilantly. The demon ghost vine followed closely behind. After crawling out, its grey vine swayed back and forth. After sensing that there were no rare and precious spiritual plants marked around, it lay on the ground listlessly, looking like it had no desire to live. Wind and thunder sword grass. Planted here. Lu Xuan found an open area and performed the earth drawing technique to plant the wind and thunder sword grass in the spiritual soil. The sword grass was already 3 feet long, with a grey-black sword body, standing upright, and the tip of the sword pointing directly to the sky. Not long after it was planted, subtle wind and thunder sword energy was automatically generated around it, causing bursts of slight sword whistling sounds as it spun and danced. Moonlight grass, we need to find a cool place for it. Lu Xuan's spiritual power surged, and the stones and soil of the spiritual field on the island kept changing. In a few breaths, a simple shed was built to block the scorching sun for the moonlight grass. When night fell, the shed was removed, so that the tower could fully absorb the moonlight. Then came the 4th grade black insect vine. More than a dozen insect chambers with strange structures were linked together, weird but harmonious, forming a strange symbiotic relationship. After planting the black insect vine, Lu Xuan immediately buried the 3rd grade starlight sword grass and the 4th grade sword Qiangxiao. Because the corresponding sword techniques of the 2 sword grasses were not exquisite enough, they could only absorb spiritual energy and barely maintain their vitality. In addition, 10 ordinary 2nd grade sword grasses were planted. After these matured, they were mainly used to condense spiritual seeds, expand the scale of sword grass, and improve the sword grass varieties with a larger base. Most of the area of the entire spiritual field was used to cultivate water firefly grass. There were nearly 160 water firefly grass spiritual seeds condensed before, which was also the key to Lu Xuan's breakthrough to the middle stage of foundation building in a short time. He was already ordinary in aptitude, and he had come to Kangming Island, where the spiritual energy was relatively thin. If there was no water firefly grasslight group to help him improve his cultivation, it would take him a long time to successfully break through. After planting the water firefly grass, Lu Xuan came to the courtyard, jumped off the stone cliff, went deep into a cave, and found a small branch of the earth fire. It's barely enough. At worst, I can use the greenwood source energy to ripen it. He put the earth fire heart lotus with many light red lotus seeds into the hot magma. After being washed by the hot magma many times, the vitality of the earth fire heart lotus was restored a lot. The lotus leaves and roots were shining with red and light red light, gorgeous and dazzling. As for these funitherworld spiritual plants, I can't care so much. I will mix them with other spiritual plants. He returned to the spiritual field and took out the 3 netherworld spiritual plants he brought. 2 ghost-faced stone mushrooms with strange patterns growing on the surface of the grey stone look like strange faces when you look closely. Fascinating. The thorn bones have grown into a small forest of bones. The thin and long bones grow wantonly. There are countless tiny bone spurs on the sides of the bones. They are so dense that they can instantly suck a fresh monster corpse into a dry corpse. On the trunk of the 100 pupils strange tree, which is as old as the skin of a face, dozens of evil pupils opened at the same time, staring at Lu Xuan and turning slightly. Many pupils still have dried monster riballs hanging on them. They have all been dried for a long time, like a shabby grey lantern shaking weakly in the wind. A cool breath came from Lu Xuan's neck, and the discomfort brought by dozens of evil pupils disappeared instantly. He found a remote corner and planted these 3 kinds of underworld spiritual plants. Kangming Island is not like the small courtyard of Jianmen Town. It is protected by the 4th grade 1000 illusion cloud smoke array. In addition, it is located near the Xianjian sect. It is almost difficult to see the figure of evil cultivators, so there is no need to worry too much about the safety of spiritual plants. In the Xianjian sect, he was just a small cultivator in the early stage of foundation building. If he planted many spiritual plants from the netherworld, he might attract attention and even cause doubts about his origin and purpose. However, it was different on Kangming Island. With his cultivation in the early stage of foundation building and his status as a disciple of the Xianjian sect, he could be regarded as one of the cultivators with the highest power among the surrounding islands. Even if he was discovered, it would not be a big deal. Therefore, Lu Xuan no longer avoided it and directly mixed thorn bones and other spiritual plants with other spiritual plants. Finally, everything has been properly handled. I will start my 3-year career of farming on the deserted island. Although the spiritual energy and soil on Kangming Island were much weaker than those of the Xianjian sect, Lu Xuan still maintained an optimistic attitude. In the next 10 days, he stayed indoors and carefully cultivated and cared for the many spiritual plants in the spiritual field. During this period, the elegant cultivator Song Yu came to invite him to the banquet several times. After Lu Xuan attended once or twice, he declined his invitation and devoted himself to the spiritual plants. The 3rd grade thorn bones are mature. That day, while inspecting the spiritual field, Lu Xuan found that the faint progress bar below the thorn bones had been filled up. With surprise, he carefully pulled out the thorn bush surrounded by the bones. The roots spread deep underground. When they were pulled out, they looked like white bones with a little soil, like skeletons that saw the light of day again after many years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291, Skeleton Demon Puppet. Lu Xuan focused his mind on the thorn bone and soon learned its detailed information. Thorn bone, a 3rd grade spiritual plant, cultivated with the essence of bones, can be used to refine higher level puppets or some evil artifacts of the white bone Dao, good quality. After this transplant, there were not many cultivated in Jianmen Town before. It is quite good to get this quality. Lu Xuan guessed that the high-grade bones such as the 6-eyed red iron scorpion and the barbarian armored bull played a significant role, otherwise it would be difficult to get a good 3rd grade mature thorn bone. He put away the thorn bone and focused his attention on the white light ball that quietly emerged. The light ball flickered slightly and many white bone phantoms appeared on the surface. Lu Xuan touched the surface of the light ball with expectation. In an instant, the light ball turned into countless tiny light spots and poured into his body. A thought flashed through his mind. Harvest the 3rd grade thorn bone and obtain the 4th grade treasure white bone demon puppet. A sphere the size of a baby's head appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. The sphere was uneven and glowed with a white light, as if it was made of countless tiny white bones. Xuan focused his mind on the white sphere and instantly learned detailed information about it. White bone demon puppet, a 4th grade treasure, is extremely hard, comparable to a 4th grade magic weapon. Under the control of spiritual consciousness, it can freely switch into multiple forms. After the spiritual energy is exhausted, it needs to absorb the essence of the bones of high-grade monks or monsters to replenish it. 4th grade treasure can freely switch into multiple forms. Xuan looked at the white bone demon puppet in his hand with surprise. With a thought, the white bone sphere in his hand suddenly grew dense bone spurs. The bone spurs were about 1 or 2 feet long and extremely sharp, like a hedgehog. Then, many bone spurs suddenly softened, and the sphere quickly stretched to form a bone spear more than half a foot long. Xuan held the cold spear in his hand. The tip of the spear pointed at a huge rock in the distance, and his mind moved. Shoot! Magic spear! In an instant, the bone spear stretched out rapidly and stabbed into the boulder in a flash. The boulder collapsed instantly, and large and small stones exploded in all directions, scattering all over the ground. The effect is quite good. Xuan narrowed his eyes and thought secretly. Under his spiritual control, the white bone sphere constantly switched to various forms, bone swords, bone spears, and bone arrows in the sky, allowing him to play with them for a long time. Time flew on the island. After the initial discomfort, Song Yu gradually got used to Xuan's every move. He only left a communication talisman for communication in emergency situations, such as sea beasts attacking the island, evil cultivators or evil spirits invading Kangming Island, etc. At other times, he used Song Yun as a megaphone to report to Xuan the recent events on the island. In his spare time, Xuan would instruct Song Yun on his skills and swordsmanship. Due to the long-term cultivation of swordgrass and the absorption of several sword experience packages, he can also be called proficient in swordsmanship. After he casually pointed out a few points, Song Yun improved a lot in swordsmanship. Life was simple and fulfilling. In the boundless sea, there was a tall building facing the sea. The building was more than 100 feet high, and at the top, stood 2 extraordinary monks. A woman with sharp features and a young man with a lazy temperament, both of whom were in the early stage of foundation building. At this time, the young man held a fishing rod more than 10 feet long in his hand. The fishing line was made of unknown material. There were almost invisible lines on the thin fishing line. Under the sunlight, it glowed silver white. Suddenly, the fishing rod fell down suddenly. The lazy young man's expression did not change. He held the fishing rod with a huge force in one hand, and his arm muscles bulged, and he raised it back. On the fish hook as thick as a wrist, there was a 2-foot-long carp. The carp had a strange shape and a slender body, which was somewhat similar to a dragon. The fish whiskers kept jumping and struggling in the air. Fellow Daoist, she is really good at fishing. He caught a rare dragon carp of the 2nd rank easily. The sharp woman next to him glanced at the huge carp and praised expressionlessly. Haha, fellow Daoist, Zhao is too kind. It's worth it that I used special means to refine such a fishing rod comparable to a magic weapon and use the meat of a 3rd rank monster as bait. So I was lucky enough to catch such a rare dragon carp. It looks like it weighs more than 1,000 pounds. He felt the force coming from the fishing rod in his hand and said with a smile, fellow Daoist Zhao, come back to the island with me later to taste this dragon carp. Fellow Daoist, she comes to the beach every day to fish for sea fish. Aren't you worried about the new inner disciples of Kangming Island? The sharp woman said lightly. Oh, the new inner disciples of Xianjian sect have come? I stay at the beach every day and haven't paid attention to the news there for a long time. The lazy young man exclaimed and looked at the female cultivator. It's been more than half a month since he came here. What's the new one like? Is he as rude and overbearing as the previous Zumanzi? The young man slowly gathered up the fishing line drawn with runes and asked. They are not of the same personality, but 2 extremes. The only thing they have in common is that they are both weird. How weird? According to the news from Kangming Island, the new resident monk is very young. As soon as he arrived on the island, he asked the Song family to find him a spiritual field. The sharp female cultivator was very well informed and said slowly, looking for a spiritual field. Could it be that the new resident monk is a spiritual plant master? the lazy young man said with a smile, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. That should be the case. He has been staying in the spiritual field for the past half month and has hardly gone out. Even Song Yu, the owner of Kangming Island, invited him several times. This is quite rare, but if he is a spiritual plant master, he should not be very good at fighting. I guess he is just here to do superficial work. The young man lifted the huge dragon carp and threw it on the wooden board on the top of the tall building. Soon, 2 high-level key training monks ran over and tied the dragon carp tightly with rope like magic tools. Low-grade spiritual plants are okay. The cultivation method is simple and the maturity cycle is short, but high-grade spiritual plants require monks to spend a lot of energy and time to cultivate, so it is likely to affect normal practice. In addition, in the process of dealing with flowers and plants, it is easy to wear down one's temper. Therefore, in the general concept of most monks who focus on spiritual plants are usually not good at fighting and have relatively mild personalities. Just a spiritual farmer. The young man took out a piece of golden monster meat from the storage bag, hung it on the fishhook, and threw it hard into the turbulent water surface. After hearing that Lu Xuan was just a spiritual plant master who was keen on cultivating spiritual plants, the lazy young man's attitude changed a lot, and his respect for Lu Xuan dropped by 2 levels. After all, he is a foundation building cultivator from the Xianjian sect. Fellow Daoist Shi, don't underestimate him. The woman with sharp features forced a smile. Although she said so, she agreed with the lazy young man's opinion in her heart and was somewhat disapproving of the new resident cultivator of the Xianjian sect. Chapter 292, Sand Snail. Kangming Island. In the early morning, the red sun rose, casting a 1,000-foot high glow. The sea surface was heaving, and the salty sea breeze blew. Lu Xuan got up early and checked the growth of the spiritual plants in the spiritual field. The water firefly grass has grown slender buds, and the young leaves are light blue. There are fluorescent dots on the leaves, which echo the deep blue sea in the distance. More than 100 water fireflies occupy most of the spiritual field, growing in the water-rich environment of Kangming Island. Although the growth is not as good as in the Xianjian sect, each water firefly grass is plump and moist. The spiritual power in Lu Xuan's body surged, and thin clouds and rain appeared above the water fireflies. Threads of spiritual rain dripped down and landed on the light blue leaves. The fluorescence on the leaves was even stronger, as if it was greedily absorbing the spiritual rain. It flickered slightly, like the sparkling sea surface in the sun. After cultivating more than 100 water fireflies, Lu Xuan continued to check the rest of the spiritual plants in the spiritual field. 10 ordinary second-grade sword grasses have already broken through the soil, like 10 slender swords inserted into the soil, standing upright, and one can feel the sharpness coming from the plants. Next to it, although the 3rd-grade starlight sword grass was planted earlier, due to its higher grade, Lu Xuan's control over the starlight sword art can barely be considered as entry level, so its growth progress is not much different from that of ordinary sword grass. As for the 4th-grade giant Gaianxiao, it is still buried in the shallow layer of the spiritual soil, absorbing spiritual power to maintain its vitality. Although it is still a seedling, the starlight sword grass is already obviously different from ordinary sword grass. There are a few stars on the surface of the gray-black plant, which runs in an extremely obscure trajectory, revealing a mysterious meaning. The more Lu Xuan looked at it, the more he liked it. The corners of his mouth rose, and he flicked his finger on the top of the 3-inch starlight sword grass. A slight clanging sound of a sword rang out. The starlight sword grass seemed fragile, but it refused to bend. It stood upright, swinging back and forth under Lu Xuan's force, and it took a long time to calm down. Seeing this, Lu Xuan couldn't help but get playful, flicking the top of the starlight sword grass from time to time. Tick. Tick, a crisp chirping sound rang out, and the wind falcon flapped its broad light blue wings and flew over from a distance, holding a 1st-grade demon bird in its claws. You are the one who has the most fun coming to this Kangming Island. Lu Xuan looked at the wind falcon that flew in front of him with the demon bird and showed his courtesy, stretched out his hand and rubbed its soft belly and said with a smile, "In the Xianjian sect, the inner sect has formations and restrictions everywhere, so Lu Xuan was afraid that the wind falcon would accidentally touch it, so he kept it on the mountain to raise it. For the wind falcon, which is famous for its speed, this way of raising it makes its nature restricted, and it occasionally feels uncomfortable. After arriving at this island, Xuan let it fly freely in the nearby sea. Although it has not yet grown to the second grade, it has an air advantage after all, and is famous for its speed, so Xuan is not worried about its safety. Senior Lu. A clear young man's voice came from outside the yard. Soon, Songyun appeared in front of Xuan, holding a food box in his hand, which contained spiritual fruits and spiritual wine, and often spiritual fish cooked in various ways. After spending some time with Xuan, and feeling that Xuan was not difficult to get along with, Songyun also regained some of his youthful nature, not as restrained as at the beginning. Xuan tested him as usual, and gave him some advice on swordsmanship. Not bad, your swordsmanship is getting more and more sophisticated. If you keep up this growth rate, you will have a good chance of successfully joining the Xianjian sect. He praised casually. Thanks to your careful guidance, senior. Songyun said respectfully, and his eyes turned slightly when he saw the spiritual plants growing well not far away. Senior, I have a little sister who also loves spiritual plants and spiritual beasts like you. In addition to practicing every day, she spends her time cultivating spiritual plants and raising spiritual beasts. Oh, really? Take me over to have a look. Hearing this, Xuan felt a little more curious. After arriving at this Kangming island, he had been staying indoors. Only when he first arrived did he wander around for a while and learn a little about some of the spiritual plants and animals with island characteristics. When he heard Songyun's words, he had the idea of going to take a look. Yes, senior, please follow me. Songyun took Xuan around and came to a courtyard. After calling twice, a young girl came out to greet him. She had delicate features on her round face and was cute and lovely at this age. Lu. Senior Lu. The girl was angry when she saw Songyun, but when she saw Xuan coming from behind, her face changed and she greeted him respectfully. Senior Lu, this is my little sister, Song Xining. Xuan nodded slightly. After Songyun explained his purpose, Song Xining took the two into the courtyard. What surprised Xuan a little was that there was a large pool in the courtyard, which was more than 10 feet long and wide, with many spiritual trees planted on the edge. There are many silver algae growing in the pool, like a bunch of thick hair, which is the silver algae that Xuan saw at the stall of casual cultivators before. Senior Lu, this is silver algae, which can be used to feed many sea fish and sea beasts. After collecting it, drying it and crushing it, it can also be used as a material for refining elixirs. Seeing Xuan's eyes on the silver algae in the pool, Song Xining hurriedly introduced it. That is a first-grade spiritual plant, blood coral, which can be used to refine low-grade magic tools after it matures. That is, there are several kinds of spiritual plants planted in the pool, and their growth conditions are closely related to water, which opened Xuan's eyes. Among the spiritual plants he cultivated before, only the pure snow lotus, which was first cultivated in the market, needs to grow in spiritual springs. In addition, the earth fire heart lotus grows in hot magma, and there is also the dragon skeleton grass that cannot be bred for the time being. In addition, the rest of the spiritual plants grow in spiritual soil. Seeing that Xuan was quite interested in the spiritual plants she cultivated, Song Xining took out a handful of golden sand from her storage bag. There was a very weak spiritual fluctuation on the sand. She sprinkled the golden sand on the edge of the pool. Not long after, a huge conch emerged from the bottom of the water. The conch stretched out its great tentacles and swallowed all the golden sand left on the edge of the shore. What is this? It actually feeds on sand? Xuan asked curiously. Reporting to Senior Lu, this conch is called the sand gathering snail. It likes to eat all kinds of strange sand and stones. If you encounter one in the sea, it is very likely that there are rare and precious sand and stones hidden inside. After swallowing the sand and stones, the sand gathering snail will keep the sand and stones in its body and slowly refine and transform them with its special organs, so as to obtain strange sand and stones with richer spiritual energy and less impurities. Many cultivators raise sand gathering snails to forge various sand and stones for forging magic tools. Song Xining introduced in detail. In a sense, he is a born worker. He thought he had earned rare sand and stone, but in fact, it was just the leaks raised by the monks behind the scenes. When they were ripe, they were cut directly. In the end, he ended up losing both his money and his life. Xuan thought secretly as he looked at the sand-gathering snail under his feet that was trying hard to swallow the golden sand. Chapter 293 Sea Monster Attacks. Senior Lu, I have a dragon carp in this pond, but for some reason, I feel that its growth is not very good recently. Can you trouble me to check it for me? Song Xining looked at Xuan with his black and white eyes and asked softly with courage. Sure, you can summon it out. Xuan said gently. He had learned a lot of knowledge about spirit beasts in the Sutra library of Xianji insect, and he had rich experience in raising them. He was confident that a spirit beast raised by a little girl at the 3rd level of key training could be raised. Besides, if he really couldn't solve the problem, he could feed it something and check the detailed status of the spirit beast. The surface of the pond was constantly gushing with bubbles, and soon, a big fish emerged from the water. The big fish was more than half a foot long, with a slender body, somewhat similar to a dragon, with fine and dense light red scales on its body, and 2 red whiskers swaying in the water. Xuan's spiritual consciousness swept over it, and sensed that the spiritual power fluctuation of the big fish was probably at the level of a 1st grade demon beast, but at first glance, it didn't have much vitality, and was weakly suspended on the water. Senior Lu, this is the dragon carp I raise. It's a 2nd grade demon beast. It's just that mine is still in its growth stage, and its strength is equivalent to that of a 1st grade demon beast. Xuan nodded gently, and his spiritual sense carefully searched every part of the dragon carp's body, trying to find the root of the problem. What does this dragon carp usually eat? After a careful inspection, Xuan asked the little girl without finding anything abnormal. I usually raise some demon insects, small fish and shrimps. In addition, dragon carp can also eat silver algae in the pond. Song Xining answered truthfully. Go get some demon insects that dragon carp usually eat. I'll see if it's a food problem and feed it some by the way to deepen the relationship so that it can be better checked. Song Xining hurriedly ran into the house and took out several insects of different shapes. Xuan picked up a grey-white ring-shaped insect and threw it in front of the dragon carp. The dragon carp instantly became energetic, swam quickly to the grey-white insect, and swallowed it in one gulp. Seeing this, Xuan focused his mind on the dragon carp in the pool and soon learned detailed information about it. Dragon carp, a 2nd grade demon beast, has extremely thin true dragon blood in its body, which has been diluted for countless generations, and is almost gone. Feeding on demon insects, fish, shrimp, and seaweed, it is naturally strong, and can comprehend simple water-based magic on its own after maturity. Due to its limited range of activities and the poor water quality of its growth environment, it is in a very weak state. So that's how it is. It's still simple and effective to feed it something. Xuan thought secretly in his heart. This dragon carp actually has a very thin trace of true dragon blood, but it just sounds bluffing. Even compared with the dragons and pythons in Qian Long Lake, it is still much worse. I think the problem has been found. Dragon carp is a 2nd grade demon beast. It grows in the vast sea and can swim freely and unrestrainedly. But your dragon carp grows in such a shallow pool. I couldn't feel the difference when I first raised it, but as it gradually grew up, this pool became a kind of confinement for it. In addition, the water quality in the sea is different from that on the island, which makes this dragon carp a little uncomfortable, so it slowly loses its vitality and becomes what it is now. Xuan smiled and said to Song Xining, if conditions permit, you can take this dragon carp out for a walk in the near sea to release its nature. In addition, you need to change the water in the pool regularly to better simulate the growth environment required by the dragon carp. So this is the problem. Song Xining opened her mouth slightly and suddenly realized. Senior Lu is worthy of being from a famous family. He saw the problem with my spirit beast at a glance. She looked at Xuan with full admiration. Xuan asked her some common sense about water-based spiritual plants and spiritual beasts, and then left with Song Yun. On the way, he suddenly noticed that a white jade talisman on his waist was shaking constantly. Xuan's heart tightened. The talisman was a communication talisman left by Song Yu, used for emergency communication. If it sounded, it meant that there was an abnormal situation on Kangming Island that the Song family could not solve smoothly. He quickly took off the talisman, and a wisp of spiritual power seeped into it. Song Yu's somewhat anxious voice came from the talisman. Uncle Lu, there may be a large number of sea beasts invading this sea area, where calming spiritual fish are raised. Please come to calm the situation. Okay, I know. Senior Lu, take me with you. Song Yun heard this, and an expression of eagerness appeared on his face. He had practiced swordsmanship under Lu Xuan for a long time. It was a rare opportunity to check the results, so he naturally didn't want to miss it. Lu Xuan nodded, and the purple lightning sword surged with spiritual power, enveloping Song Yun, and rushing to the sea area, where Song Yu was. In the vast sea, Song Yu and hundreds of Song family Kigan practitioners dispersed and stared at the sea in the distance. What's going on? Lu Xuan stopped in front of Song Yu, put Song Yun down, and asked calmly. Seeing him like this, Song Yu, who was originally anxious, felt much more relaxed, as if he had found his backbone. Uncle Lu, the monks of the Song family patrolling the sea have noticed obvious abnormalities in the nearby sea area. It is very likely that a large number of sea beasts will invade the area where the calming spirit fish are raised. A large number of sea beasts invading? Are these cases common? Not many. Calming spirit fish is of great benefit to many sea beasts and fish. It is a natural top-grade tonic. Therefore, there are often sea beasts trying to sneak in and hunt spirit fish. There are generally two ways. One is to hide from the eyes of the Song family and sneak in from the bottom of the sea to poach calming spirit fish. The other is to forcibly attack the defense line arranged by the Song family and hunt spirit fish in the chaos. The second situation is relatively rare, but once it happens, if the protection is not thorough enough, it may lead to a large number of calming spirit fish being hunted, resulting in huge losses. So, Uncle Lu, I'll trouble you to calm the situation later. If there is an emergency, please suppress it with thunder. Song Yu said solemnly. Don't worry, I'm here. There will be no accidents. Lu Xuan said confidently. He looked around and found that he was in a sunken sea area with an island on one side and a large number of reefs and stone walls on the other side, which could provide a certain degree of protection. The most important part was the part that was in direct contact with the boundless sea. After he entered the calming island, he learned some relevant information. Because of the peculiar terrain and special water quality, it was suitable for the growth and reproduction of calming spirit fish. Therefore, the Song family circled this sea area to specifically raise calming spirit fish. In terms of protection, since the direct contact with the boundless sea was nearly 10 miles, and the water depth in the surrounding area was 100 feet, unless it was a 5th grade high-level formation, other ordinary formations could not play a significant role. The Song family could only set up some simple protective devices and send monks to patrol day and night so as to better guard this sea area. Here they come. He felt the movement in the depths of the sea with his spiritual consciousness and said softly. Chapter 294, Unrighteous Action. The sound of splashing gradually intensified from far to near. Looking far away, hundreds of sea beasts of various shapes rushed to the sea area designated by the Song family. There were turtles floating on the water like arrows, moving rapidly. There were sea beasts with puffy feet, jumping 10 feet on the water. There were also dragons and fish monsters appearing and disappearing on the water, approaching rapidly. The aura was basically that of 1st and 2nd grade monsters, but there were too many of them. Song Yu and other monks of the Song family were on guard, holding talismans and magic tools, and staring at the many sea beasts that were getting closer and closer. Attack. Seeing that the sea beasts were about to touch the first line of defense set up by the Song family, Song Yu gave an order. Suddenly, the talismans in the hands of hundreds of monks were activated one after another, and countless ice spears, ice arrows, ice spikes, etc. attacked the many sea beasts. The sea beasts either relied on their strong bodies to resist, or evaded with agility, or counterattacked with water magic. For a time, various magics were flying, and the water surface was turbulent. Because the Song family was well prepared, many sea beasts were seriously injured, or even died directly in the first round of talismans, dyeing a large area of the sea blood red. However, the number of sea beasts far exceeded that of the monks. After the first round of talismans, many sea beasts quickly adapted and rushed towards the Song family monks fiercely and violently. Under the attack of many sea beasts, the monks were unable to cope with it. In less than a moment, it was obvious that they were at a disadvantage and their defense line was in jeopardy. It takes 1,000 days to raise a sword and only a moment to use it. It has been kept in the scabbard for so long, and it is time to see blood. Lu Xuan held the ancient scabbard and looked solemnly at the sea beasts that were rampant in the sea. Finally, under the fierce attack of a huge sea beast, several Song family monks were repelled, and a crack appeared in the defense line. In an instant, more than 20 sea beasts came in. Oops. Song Yu, who had been paying attention, found a flaw in the defense line and exclaimed, and was about to come to help. The clanging of swords rang out. There was a sudden explosion in the ears of the monks and sea beasts present, and a deep purple lightning flashed. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the purple lightning sword directly penetrated the head of the monster that entered the water. At the huge hole, the lightning jumped happily, completely burning the head of the sea beast to black. The purple lightning sword itself is in the forefront of the 3rd grade flying swords. The sword body is attached with the power of thunder and lightning, and it has been nourished in the mysterious Xuan sword sheath for so long. With the momentum, it easily solved more than 20 sea beasts in one encounter. Thank you, Uncle Lu, for your timely rescue. Not far away, Song Yu's face was full of gratitude. Although only the first line of defense was breached, if he could not quickly deal with these sea beasts, leaving the calming spirit fish in the waters to be hunted by them, the loss would be great. It's my job. Lu Xuan replied calmly. You should pay more attention to the surroundings. If you find any family disciples who can't bear the impact, relieve their pressure in time. Yes. Song Yu responded quickly. He looked at the more than 20 sea beast corpses floating on the water, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Since Lu Xuan came to Kangming Island, he basically stayed in the yard with the spiritual field, closed the door, and devoted himself to the spiritual plants. In this situation, he subconsciously thought that Lu Xuan was just a disciple of the Xianjian sect who was keen on spiritual plants. On the surface, he still maintained respect, but unconsciously underestimated him. Unexpectedly, Lu Xuan's combat power far exceeded his imagination. With just one encounter, he easily solved more than 20 sea beasts. As expected, he is from a famous family. His swordsmanship is not comparable to that of ordinary foundation building cultivators. Song Yu sighed secretly, and instantly came back to his senses. Looking at the battle situation on the sea, he felt much more at ease. Next, Lu Xuan sat in the rear, and when he saw the Song family cultivators in urgent situations, he rushed to help them, and killed several sea beasts in a few moves. In this way, the situation gradually stabilized. More than 100 sea beasts died in a short period of time, and their momentum was getting weaker and weaker. Some of them are cunning. Lu Xuan exclaimed softly, and his spiritual consciousness detected the movement. Then, a light blue bead with spiritual light flew out of the storage bag, and was held in his mouth. It was a water walking bead that allowed him to walk on flat ground in deep water. He continued to sink, and landed on the bottom of the sea. Under the protection of the water walking bead, he moved freely, and was not affected by the deep water at all. Under the spiritual consciousness, dozens of 2nd grade sea beasts dived into the bottom of the water, and were approaching Lu Xuan quickly. In the dim seabed, the purple lightning sword in Lu Xuan's hand turned into a purple light and shot at the sea beasts at a high speed. Like a venomous snake that had been dormant for a long time, it emerged from the darkness in an instant, and pierced through the heads of 3 2nd grade sea beasts at once. The other sea beasts were affected by this and became ferocious, rushing towards Lu Xuan brazenly. Lu Xuan snorted coldly, and the purple lightning sword quickly turned back, and stabbed the nearest scaled sea beast. At the same time, the Zunlei sword pill in the Danshan suddenly rotated, and countless dark black sword beams surged out of the Danshan, like a large school of fish, drawing a beautiful arc, and rushing towards the few sea beasts at the edge. A white bone ball rolled out of the storage bag, and under the control of Lu Xuan's mind, it was instantly pulled into a white bone spear, like lightning, shooting at the other sea beasts. Just when the sea beast thought it could easily dodge, the tip of the white spear suddenly cracked, like a flower that bloomed in an instant, and the flower continued to stretch and extend, and soon became a huge white bone net. All this happened in a flash, and more than a dozen sea beasts were unable to react, and were covered by the giant bone net. The giant net quickly closed, and the net wires turned into thin and long barbed bone spurs, which penetrated deeply into the bodies of sea beasts. The 4th grade white bone magic puppet artifact was naturally extremely easy to deal with the bodies of 2nd grade monsters. Not long after, under the combined efforts of the purple lightning sword, Zunlui sword and the white bone magic puppet, all the sea beasts that tried to sneak in from the bottom of the sea were solved. Xuan looked at the corpses on the bottom of the water, floated in front of him, and the purple lightning sword cut out the pupils of the sea beasts one by one. Fresh monster eyes, can't be let go. Xuan was still thinking about the 100 pupils weird wood in the spiritual field, and there happened to be ready-made pupils to nourish it. Well, digging out all the pupils of sea beasts doesn't seem like the right way. On the bottom of the sea, dozens of monster corpses with deep black holes in their eye sockets were scattered everywhere, which looked extremely tragic at a glance. If the Song family monks saw it, it might cause some bad associations. Xuan thought to himself, and an idea came to his mind. The white bone demon puppet turned into a dark white wooden stick with a white bone propeller blade on the top, spinning rapidly and shooting at the heads of the corpses on the seabed. Under the huge impact, many heads exploded under the impact, becoming headless corpses. It looks much more normal this way. At most, they will only think whether I have some brutal means, and will never think that I have secretly dug out all the pupils. Since the problem cannot be covered, then destroy it directly. Xuan looked at the dozens of corpses underground and thought secretly in his heart. Chapter 295 Xuan Iron Pill. On the vast sea. As more and more sea beasts were solved by the Song family monks, the battle gradually subsided. Except for a few sea beasts that were still fighting, the rest of the sea beasts died or escaped. Many monks calmed down and cleaned up the battlefield. With a splash, suddenly, dozens of headless sea beasts emerged from the water, and their blood spread rapidly, making the surrounding waters blood red. Just as everyone was in doubt, Xuan jumped out of the water without any damage, and the water beads in his mouth fell into the storage bag. Just now I felt that many sea beasts wanted to sneak in from the bottom of the sea, so I went down to solve them. However, the situation was urgent, just in case the force of the attack was a bit too strong, and all their heads were destroyed by one of my magic weapons. Xuan looked at the elegant monk Songyu who came from a distance, and made up a reason to explain. Master Uncle, you have worked hard. Fortunately, Master Uncle is here this time, otherwise I don't know how many empty spirit fish I would have lost. Songyu said hurriedly. How were the casualties among the Song family cultivators during this sea beast attack? The overall situation is not bad. Nearly 20 people were injured in the attack of so many sea beasts, 5 of whom were seriously injured and needed to be treated and recuperated for a period of time. In addition, a cultivator at the 5th level of key training accidentally died. At that time, he and several others were besieged by more than 10 2nd grade sea beasts. One of them suddenly became extremely violent and attacked crazily without caring about its own safety. I failed to rescue him in time, resulting in the death of that family member. Songyu said with his head down, with a hint of guilt in his tone. At the same time, he felt extremely fortunate. This time, hundreds of sea beasts suddenly attacked and came to hunt the Kangming spirit fish. Under normal circumstances, the casualties would be more than 10 times greater than now, and a large number of Kangming spirit fish would also be lost. It was because of Xuan, a foundation building cultivator, that the offensive of sea beasts could be resolved many times and the problem of sea beast invasion could be easily solved. Thinking of this, Songyu and other Song family cultivators looked at Xuan with strong gratitude. Take good care of the injured monks. As for the sacrificed son of the Song family, make sure to make proper arrangements for his family. Xuan instructed Songyu. In addition, take good care of these monster corpses. We should be able to sell some spiritual stones. Yes, Uncle Lu. I will handle all matters as soon as possible. At the same time, I will order people to deal with the monsters as soon as possible and sell them in exchange for spiritual stones. Then I will hand over my share to Uncle. Songyu understood what Xuan meant and immediately assured him. There were more than 200 monster corpses left. It was impossible to hand over all the spiritual stones to Xuan, but his share would definitely not be missing. Okay, then I'm relieved. Xuan nodded with satisfaction. He had contributed a lot to solving the problem of sea beast invasion this time. If he gave away these monster corpses for nothing, it would not be his usual style. He was not greedy, but he could not let himself suffer losses. After patrolling around the waters, to make sure there were no sea beasts, Xuan returned to his family courtyard. Although the courtyard spiritual field was not protected by a high-grade formation like the Thousand Illusion Clouds and Smoke formation, Xuan also arranged a second-grade formation, which was considered a good defensive device on Kangming Island. He opened the formation, and did not care about resting, and came to the center of the spiritual field. The 100 Eyes Weird Tree and the remaining 2 Ghost Face Stone Mushrooms were divided into a separate area, isolated from other normal spiritual plants. Xuan came to the 100 Eyes Weird Tree. On the old tree trunk that looked like human skin, dozens of pupils opened at the same time, and the evil pupils stared at Xuan coldly, swimming slowly on the tree trunk. Wherever Xuan walked, the pupils swam there, staring at him intently. Under the gaze of so many strange pupils, Xuan felt lost. A cool breath came from the immaculate jade on his neck, and his mind was instantly clear. You will see it wherever you go. Be careful or I will sue you for harassment. Xuan scolded, took out dozens of fresh sea beast pupils from the storage bag, and threw them at the old tree trunk of the 100 Eyes Weird Tree. Freshly out of the oven, although the grade is not very good, but it is better in terms of exotic flavor. Dozens of nearly transparent slender tentacles shot out from the pupils, nailed the sea beast's pupils, pulled them to the evil pupils, and sucked them to their heart's content. The 4th grade 100 Eyes Weird Wood, the first 4th grade spiritual plant that is about to mature. I wonder what kind of light ball reward it will give. Xuan looked at the 100 Eyes Weird Wood that was constantly sucking the fresh sea beast's pupils, and his heart was particularly looking forward to it. He turned his head and looked at the 2 ghost-faced stone mushrooms not far away. With his mind focused, he found that the translucent progress bar under one of them was full. Another one is fully mature. Xuan glanced at the face that was about to appear formed by the strange lines on the top of the plant, and carefully picked it out. A thought flashed through his mind. Ghost-faced stone mushroom, a 3rd grade spiritual plant, is nourished by the resentment of ghosts, and can be used to assist in the practice of certain evil magics and speed up its practice. He put this good quality ghost-faced stone mushroom into the storage bag, and focused all his attention on the light ball that quietly appeared on the ground. The light ball flickered slightly, exuding a faint cold breath. With a light touch, the white light ball turned into countless light spots, and the light spots formed a vague and strange face, which instantly drilled into Xuan's body. A thought flashed through his mind, and a round pill appeared in Xuan's hand. The pill was the size of a pigeon egg, with a forest white color. Holding it in the hand, one could feel a pure cold breath. The pill pattern was strange, as if it was constantly wriggling. Xuan's mind was concentrated on the pill, and he instantly learned detailed information about it. Xuan Yin Pill, a 4th grade pill, is made from many extremely yin materials, and contains a large amount of pure yin energy. It is a great tonic for many yin beasts and evil spirits. After taking it, ghost cultivators who practice corresponding techniques can greatly enhance their spiritual power. It's a 4th grade elixir, but it's a bit evil, and not suitable for me at the moment. Xuan thought secretly. He didn't have any yin beasts around him. At the same time, his own spiritual power was authentic and peaceful. Taking this 4th grade Xuan pill rashly might only have the opposite effect. However, for some evil cultivators, this Xuan pill is a top grade elixir. I have to find a chance to sell it, and exchange it for other good things. He thought to himself, and looked at the only remaining ghost-faced stone mushroom. At that time, 4 of the 5 dormant ghost-faced stone mushrooms dug out from the secret realm had matured. Perhaps it was because most of the time they were planted across levels, and the ghost-faced stone mushrooms were rare. The rewards from the 4 white light balls were very good. 2 of them opened 2 4th grade magic weapons, the Soul Guiding Lantern. 1 opened a 4th grade magic weapon, the 1000 Minion Ghost Face, and the 4th grade elixir Xuan pill that was just opened. The only pity is, that the light balls rewarded by the underworld spiritual plants also have strong underworld attributes. Except for the 4th grade magic weapon 1000 chapter Strange Face, the soul guiding lamp and Xuan iron pill are not suitable for one's use. Chapter 296 Fish Chaos. In the courtyard, Lu Xuan sat cross-legged, the ancient scabbard in his hand kept shaking. A dark black and slender spiritual seed fell out of the crack of the scabbard very smoothly. It was a swordgrass spiritual seed that had been placed in the scabbard for a long time. At this time, there was a faint black wind lingering around the spiritual seed, and there were tiny arcs of electricity jumping on the surface of the spiritual seed that were almost invisible to the naked eye, and they dissipated into the air in an instant. I got another 3rd grade wind and thunder sword grass spiritual seed. Lu Xuan grabbed the wind and thunder sword grass spiritual seed that had successfully mutated, and he was satisfied. He planted the spiritual seed in the spiritual field, and the silky spiritual rain penetrated into the spiritual seed and the surrounding spiritual soil very accurately. Then, hundreds of dark black sword beams as thin as hair shot out from Lu Xuan's dantian, and entered one after another. At this time, more than 2 months had passed since the sea beast attacked the waters of the Kangming spirit fish. During this period, the island was calm and there was no abnormality. Not long after the attack, Song Yu and Song Yun brought more than 1,000 spirit stones to Lu Xuan, which was more than he had imagined. After returning, Lu Xuan stayed in the Yardates to cultivate spiritual plants. The sword grass spirit seed he just got was the 3rd wind and thunder sword grass spirit seed he had obtained recently. The stimulation of the Zunli sword light, coupled with the nourishment of the mysterious Yangtze sword sheath, made the 2nd grade sword grass spirit seed have a very high mutation success rate. The only drawback is that the Zunli sword light consumed is not a small number, and the nourishment time is not short, but compared with getting a mutated wind and thunder sword grass spirit seed, this drawback is nothing. The scabbard can only withstand a limited number of sword lights, so it can only nourish one sword grass spirit seed at a time. More than 10 sword grasses have been planted next to it, like a small forest of swords, each of which points directly to the sky. In the entire spiritual field, various sword ki are rampant. 10 2nd grade ordinary sword grasses are mainly used to condense sword grass spirit seeds in the future. The 1st wind and thunder sword grass that successfully mutated successfully will not be fully mature for long. There are also the 3rd grade starlight sword grass and the 4th grade sword thousand owl from the sword hall. The attached starlight sword art has already been learned, but it is still not considered proficient. When cultivating the starlight sword grass, you need to be cautious, and cautious, so as not to use a not so subtle starlight sword ki and directly cut off the starlight sword grass that is still in the early stages of growth. As for the 4th grade thousand owl sword art, after coming to Kangming Island and practicing hard for several months, it has finally reached the entry level and can start to cultivate the sword thousand owl. After planting the wind and thunder sword grass spirit seed, Lu Xuan took out a new sword grass spirit seed from the storage bag. Then, the deep black sword pill in the dantian slowly turned, and hundreds and thousands of Zunli sword rays rushed out, passing through the thin film of the scabbard's crack, and entering the scabbard. The invisible sword energy is not like the flying sword such as the purple lightning sword and the red flame sword. It not only gets the desired sword energy, but also does not have to endure the pain of being inserted, so it is more popular with Yangtze sword sheath. After hitting many Zunli sword beams, Lu Xuan immediately shot the slender sword grass spirit seed into the scabbard. That's it. The slender spirit seed was like a chopstick hitting a large jar, so that the scabbard had no reaction. Lu Xuan could sense the provocation of the spiritual scabbard with his concentrated mind. Lu Xuan was silent. After nourishing the new wind and thunder sword grass spirit seed, I will reward you with a huge flying sword. He gritted his teeth and said to the ancient scabbard. Then, he patrolled around the spiritual field. During these 2 months, the last remaining ghost face stone mushroom has matured, and a 4th grade Xuan iron pill has bloomed from the white light ball, which Lu Xuan has carefully stored in his storage bag. Among the remaining spiritual plants, the 3rd grade Yulin grass is about to fully mature, and the 4th grade Xuan Chan vine, the earth fire heart lotus and the only underworld spiritual plant, the 100 pupil strange wood, have also entered the mature stage one after another. More than 100 water fireflies are growing well, which makes Lu Xuan feel that the day when he breaks through to the middle stage of foundation building is getting closer. On this day, when Lu Xuan was practicing the Thousand Owl Sword Art with great effort, Song Yu, the master of Kangming Island, suddenly came to visit. Uncle Lu, have you been used to the life these days? Kangming Island is not as good as the upper sect. The spiritual energy is thin, and there are no secret treasures. There are not many opportunities to hone the magic and sword. I wonder if Uncle Lu can adapt. Song Yu said with a smile, and there was a hint of hidden anxiety on his elegant face. Fortunately, I'm a person of indifferent nature, and rarely compete with others for opportunities and treasures. There is not much difference between Kangming Island and Xianjian sect. Lu Xuan smiled indifferently. That's good, that's good. Song Yu rubbed his hands, hesitated for a moment, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Uncle Lu, I came to bother you today because I have something important to ask for. What is it? It's like this. For some reason, the Kangming spiritual fish we raised have abnormal reactions from time to time, and they are becoming more and more frequent and severe. The Song family is helpless and can only come here to ask for help from Uncle Master. What is the specific situation? Lu Xuan's face became serious. He came to guard Kangming Island. One of his main tasks was to guard the Kangming spiritual fish on the island. If there was any accident, he would not be able to report back to Xianjian sect. At the beginning, the Song family cultivators who raised spiritual fish found that occasionally Kangming spiritual fish hit the reef. At first, they thought that they were just fed something wrong during the breeding process, but gradually found that the number of Kangming spiritual fish hitting the reef is increasing. In addition, there are a large number of Kangming spiritual fish who are reluctant to return to their habitats. They only come back reluctantly under coercion. Song Yu said anxiously. Although the spiritual fish that hit the reef were stopped or treated by the cultivators, there were already spiritual fish that repeatedly hit the reef and broke their heads. If they are unwilling to return to their habitat, a worse situation may occur. After all, there are a large number of Kangming spiritual fish staying on Kangming Island, which are closely connected with that sea area. If the sea area loses its attraction, it may lead to the loss of a large number of spiritual fish. After trying many methods and failing to solve the abnormality of Kangming spiritual fish, he thought of Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan is the only foundation building cultivator on Kangming Island. He comes from a famous family and is knowledgeable. In addition, during this period of time, Song Yu learned that Lu Xuan is very proficient in spiritual plants and spiritual beasts. In a hurry, he came to ask for help. Although it will leave an impression of incompetence in Lu Xuan's mind, at this moment, he can't care about that. Have the cultivators who raise spiritual fish on the island found anything? There are many cultivators on Kangming Island who specialize in raising Kangming spiritual fish. They may not be good at cultivating other spiritual plants and spiritual beasts, but the Song family cultivators have accumulated rich experience in Kangming spiritual fish, so Lu Xuan thought of them first. The Song family cultivators are not completely uninformed. They have deduced that there is a high probability that some strange creatures are hidden in the spirit fish's body or habitat, destroying the spirit fish's growth environment and living habits, thus causing them to have abnormal reactions. Unfortunately, they have tried every possible means, but have not been able to find the cause. There was even a cultivator who specially caught 2 empty spirit fish and dissected them open, but still did not find any abnormalities. Song Yu said with a distressed look. Take me to see. Lu Xuan's words instantly gave him a lot of hope. Chapter 297. Phaseless algae. Outside of Kangming Island, Lu Xuan stood upright on a huge rock, looking at the water below. Song Yu and 2 Song family monks who were obviously experienced in the wind and sun stood behind him, looking nervous. As far as his eyes could see, a Kangming spirit fish nearly half a meter long suddenly shot out from the water and crashed into a huge reef in front. Lu Xuan frowned slightly, and a fierce spiritual pressure was generated, directly stopping the Kangming spirit fish that wanted to hurt itself. With a thought, the Kangming spirit fish slowly floated in front of him, shaking its tail restlessly in the air. The spirit fish was glowing with crystal light and looked extremely beautiful. Lu Xuan said nothing, and a talisman for exorcism quietly appeared in his hand. A holy and pure white light shot out from the talisman and fell on the spirit fish he controlled. Until the white light disappeared, there was still no abnormal reaction on the spirit fish. The immaculate jade hanging around his neck also showed that no trace of evil spirits was found. First of all, we can rule out the evil spirits, Lu Xuan thought secretly in his heart. Then, his spiritual consciousness slowly penetrated into the body of the spirit fish, exploring every piece of flesh and blood and organs in detail. Still nothing was found. Get some seaweed for feeding spirit fish, Lu Xuan said to the Tasong family monks who were specializing in feeding the calming spirit fish behind him. Feeding when in doubt was his enduring specialty. He took a handful of light blue seaweed from the dark monk's hand and half forced it into the mouth of the spirit fish. His mind was focused on the surface of the calming spirit fish's body, and suddenly a piece of information flashed through his mind. Calming spirit fish, a second-grade demon beast, is extremely fast, and its meat is extremely delicious. It contains rich spiritual power, and is very popular among monks. Because of the parasitic Wuxiang algae in its body, the spirit fish is in a violent state. Sure enough, there is something hidden. But what is Wuxiang algae? Lu Xuan's expression was lifted, and then he became confused. He had searched the calming spirit fish in detail before, but he didn't see anything that might be related to Wuxiang algae. Then there is only one possibility. This so-called phaseless algae has a strong ability to hide, and can even evade the detection of cultivators in the early stage of foundation building. Lu Xuan did not doubt the information that appeared in his mind, and was more convinced that it was just because he could not find the phaseless algae. How can I find it? He thought secretly, and was about to put the calming spirit fish back into the water, but his action suddenly stopped. If it is not possible to find it on the shore in a short time, then returning to the water, returning to the familiar environment of the phaseless algae, it will be more difficult to find it. A flash of enlightenment flashed in Lu Xuan's mind. At this moment, we should put the phaseless algae in an unfamiliar environment, and by changing its living environment, see if it can be used as a breakthrough to find it. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan's spiritual power that had been stretched out was retracted, and the calming spirit fish was fixed in the air. The sun was scorching in the sky, and the calming spirit fish felt extremely uncomfortable under the scorching sun. I want to use this spirit fish for an experiment, Lu Xuan ordered directly, and his tone did not allow objections. As soon as he finished speaking, a red sword appeared in his hand. The sword trembled slightly, and the red lines on the sword changed quietly. Hot flames flew out from both sides of the red flame sword. Under Lu Xuan's spiritual power control, the red flames floated to the bottom of the calming spirit fish, arranged and combined, and continued to roast the belly of the spirit fish. Hidden in this spirit fish, I wonder if you are ready to die with it. Under the continuous roasting of the hot flame, the belly of the spirit fish has already emitted a burnt smell, and the crystal body has become charred. At this moment, Lu Xuan saw a layer of transparent liquid suddenly seeping out of the body of the calming spirit fish. The liquid kept flowing, and finally merged together, to form a ball of water droplets. The water droplets were transparent, and if it was not on the shore, it would be almost impossible to be noticed. Finally found you. Lu Xuan felt relieved, and a thin stream of greenwood source energy as thin as a hair flowed out from his fingertips. Since the phaseless algae is a spiritual plant, the greenwood source energy, which is condensed from the life essence of the green black deer, and contains the purest plant spiritual energy in the world, can be used to raise and cultivate it. As expected, the fine greenwood source energy was absorbed by the transparent water droplets. His mind was focused on the water droplets, and a thought emerged from his mind. The phaseless algae is a second-grade spiritual plant. It originates from the deep sea. It is invisible and colorless, and has a strong ability to hide. It parasitizes on sea fish and sea beasts, and gradually merges with them. After maturity, it can be used to refine magical instruments and talismans with hidden properties. It is extremely difficult to survive in a scorching environment. When I enter your body and merge with you, you don't even feel it. So it's such a strange spiritual plant. Lu Xuan increased the intensity of the red flame in his hand, and it burst into a scorching high temperature. A large group of transparent water drops kept changing and getting smaller and smaller. In the end, only a transparent thin skin was left, which kept swimming in his hand. Uncle Lou, is this the thing that caused the calming spirit fish to have abnormal reactions and even self-mutilation? Song Yu asked, and the other two monks who raised spirit fish also showed curiosity. Yes, this thing is called Wuxiang algae, a special spiritual plant, invisible and colorless, with a strong ability to hide. It is very difficult to detect when it parasitizes in the body of the spirit fish. Lu Xuan nodded and explained. I see, no wonder I can't find it, after thinking of so many ways. It is just a drop of water when placed in the water, and it is difficult to distinguish after merging with the spirit fish. Even if the spirit fish detects the abnormality of its body and wants to avoid risks in various ways, it can't find a solution. This time, thanks to Uncle, we found the root cause of the abnormality of the spirit fish. Song Yu took a deep breath and said with lingering fear, if there is any problem with these calming spirit fish, resulting in huge losses, then he will have no value in the Xianji sect. However, why would such a strange spiritual plant appear in the waters where the calming spirit fish are raised? No trace of it has been found for many years before. A dark-skinned monk behind him asked in confusion. Lu Xuan grabbed the transparent thin skin that kept flowing in his hand, and a hint of unknown meaning flashed in his eyes. This Wuxiang algae usually grows in the deep sea, and the waters where the spiritual fish are raised are in the offshore area. So what attracted these spiritual plants to travel thousands of miles and find this place? Lu Xuan thought secretly in his heart. Even if there are sea beasts carrying Wuxiang algae spirit seeds here, it is impossible to cause a large number of spiritual fish to become abnormal in a short period of time. Then, there is only one possibility. Someone deliberately spread a large number of Wuxiang algae spirit seeds or plant seedlings in this area. It seems that the main goal is to eliminate a large number of calming spirit fish, and at the same time, use Wuxiang algae to occupy this area, change the living environment of calming spirit fish, and disperse them. Of course, it is not ruled out that this strategy was made in order to cause huge losses to the Song family alone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298, Treat Others the Same Way. Lu Xuan pondered, called Song Yu aside, and laid a soundproof spiritual barrier. Master Song, there is one thing I must make clear to you. This phaseless algae usually only grows in the deep sea. Even if there are sea fish and sea beasts brought to this water area, it is impossible for a large number of phaseless algae spiritual plants to appear. So, this time the spiritual plant parasitized the calming spiritual fish. It was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Lu Xuan said with a firm tone. Uncle Lu means that someone deliberately harmed the Song family? Song Yu's face changed. The main purpose of going to great lengths to get this rare spiritual plant may be to harm these captive calming spiritual fish, change the environment of this water area, and make them find other places to live and reproduce. Of course, it is not ruled out that the enemies who have a grudge against your Song family will use this method to take revenge. Master Song, how many islands in the surrounding archipelagos, similar to this water area, can raise calming spiritual fish? Lu Xuan asked with a serious expression. There are 2 other islands that can raise calming spirit fish, namely Changning Island and Lingbi Island. However, the water quality and special terrain of those 2 waters are not as good as Calming Island, so the output is far lower than ours. They are not well known in the cultivation world, and outsiders only know calming spirit fish. Song Yu replied. Don't tell others about the origin of Wuxiang algae, including the 2 Song family cultivators who are with us now. After returning to the island, you will secretly investigate and find out the person behind the scenes. At the same time, temporarily block this area of water. I will stay here to treat those parasitic calming spirit fish and completely clean up the Wuxiang algae hidden in the waters. Lu Xuan's tone left no room for doubt and ordered the elegant cultivator. Yes, I will find out the cultivator or force that spread this Wuxiang algae spiritual plant as soon as possible. Please rest assured, Uncle Lu. Song Yu nodded heavily and said resolutely. The move by the person behind the scenes almost destroyed the Song family's years of hard work. If a large number of formless algae were to breed in the waters, dispersing the calming spirit fish would be a dig at the roots of the Song family. At this moment, he was filled with anger and only wanted to find out the mastermind behind the scenes and cut him into pieces. He told the two Song family monks who were guarding the spirit fish a few words and left quickly. You two, find the calming spirit fish with violent behavior and self-mutilation tendencies in the waters, and leave the rest to me. Xuan instructed the two. Yes, senior. The two responded in unison, each wearing a water walking robe and jumping into the waters. One after another, huge calming spirit fish were sent up and handed over to Xuan. Xuan couldn't find a more suitable method for a while, so he still used the method of roasting to force out the formless algae that had merged with the calming spirit fish. The calming spirit fish was placed in front of him, and a huge water ball condensed to cover its head, and its body was slowly roasted with hot flames. Once is new, twice is familiar. After understanding the origin of the phaseless algae, the flames don't need to be as strong as the first time. Although the phaseless algae looks like a water ball, it is a spiritual plant after all, and has the instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm. Under the burning of the flames, subtle changes occur in the body of the spiritual fish. Xuan keenly noticed this change, traced the source, and pulled out the phaseless algae. The calming spiritual fish suffered a little burn due to the burning of the flames. Apply the ointment provided by the Song family and rest for a few days before it can return to normal. After treating dozens of calming spiritual fish in this way, Xuan gave the remaining spiritual fish a thorough inspection to ensure that there were no phaseless algae spiritual plants lurking in their bodies. Then, he dived into the deep waters and used the King Mu Yuan key to form a fine giant net, sweeping across the bottom of the water piece by piece. If an abnormal reaction is found somewhere, the phaseless algae that has not yet parasitized the spiritual fish can be found. Asterisk on the huge island, there is a magnificent building. The building is located at the highest point of the island. From the house, you can see the boundless sea, which makes people feel heroic. A beautiful woman is lying on a mahogany chair. The woman still has charm. Her eyebrows and eyes are full of charm, and her figure is exquisite, like a ripe peach, which makes people want to take a bite. Even if the juice splashes on their face, they are willing to do it. However, the few people below did not dare to offend in the slightest, and all stared at their toes, as if they were fixed. How is the situation on Kangming Island going? The beautiful woman picked up a red spiritual fruit with her white fingers, held it with her rosy lips, and bit it gently. According to the news sent back by the insider, many of the Kangming spiritual fish living in the waters of the island have been parasitized, and a large number of spiritual fish have self-harmed. The waters have been blocked at present, and it is estimated that it has reached an extremely serious level. A middle-aged cultivator with a high level of key training stepped forward and reported to the beautiful woman. Really? A trace of joy flashed across the woman's face, and she stretched lazily, highlighting her beautiful figure. This time, thanks to Brother Sun, he presented such a strange spiritual plant. We can easily get rid of the spiritual fish in Kangming Island without any soldiers. The beautiful woman looked at a one-eyed monk not far away. The monk was a high-level key training cultivator. One eye was exposed, and the other was wrapped in black cloth. From time to time, gray-black air slowly seeped out. The one-eyed monk felt dry in the mouth. When the beautiful woman looked at him, he moistened his lips and teeth and said, "Congratulations, Madam Ning." As the phaseless algae enters its mature stage, the spiritual fish on Kangming Island will continue to be sucked of their vitality and spiritual power, and more of them will fall into madness. The waters of that area are occupied by the phaseless algae, and the water quality has changed. The Kangming spiritual fish will naturally slowly escape from there and find a new habitat. By then, we will solve the waters of Lingbi Island, and Changning Island will become a new habitat for spiritual fish. In the future, the Kangming spiritual fish will disappear from the cultivation world and will be replaced by the Changning spiritual fish. If you can really do that, Brother Sun will have made a great contribution. I will naturally reward you well. The beautiful woman covered her rosy little mouth with her white and soft hair and chuckled. In the spiritual field, Song Yu came to visit. It can be seen that he has spent countless efforts and energy during this period of time. Even with a high-level key training physique, it can be clearly seen that he is exhausted. Uncle Lou, I found the mastermind behind the scenes. I set a trap and found that a cultivator of the Song family had been turned. Under torture, he finally confessed that the Wuxiang algae was instigated by the Ning family of Changning Island. It is said that an overseas cultivator took refuge with the Ning family and offered the special spiritual plant Wuxiang algae. The Ning family then found an opportunity to spread it to the waters of Kangming Island, thereby transferring the habitat of spiritual fish to the waters of Changning Island. Song Yu said solemnly. The Ning family of Changning Island? What's their background? A local family. There is an old cultivator of the foundation building who is about to die and secluded. He has a foundation building stage and has many businesses around the infinite sea. Song Yu explained. Old cultivator in the early stage of foundation building? Then we can give him back in his own way. Lu Xuan looked at a huge wooden basin in the yard that refracted light from multiple angles and thought secretly. Chapter 299 Moonlight Pearl. Finding out the mastermind behind the scenes will make the rest of the matter easier to resolve. Regardless of how the Song family would retaliate, Lu Xuan had the idea of giving the Song family a taste of their own medicine after learning about the highest combat power of the Ning family on Changning Island. Although the Ning family's destruction of the Kangming spiritual fish in the waters did not directly harm his interests, Kangming Island belonged to the sect after all, and Lu Xuan was a monk from the sect stationed there. Coming to the island was to ensure the peace and stability of Kangming Island. If this matter could not be resolved, he would have a hard time explaining it when he returned to the Xianjian sect, which would greatly affect his reputation in the sect. When separating the phaseless algae in the waters, because the means were not fierce, the spiritual plants baked by the flames were somewhat damaged, but they did not endanger their origin. After being taken back to the spiritual field for cultivation for a few days, they recovered as usual. Leaving them in the spiritual field to be raised could not bring the light ball reward, so Lu Xuan planned to put them in the Ning family's waters. Song Yu came and left in a hurry. After Lu Xuan left, he took all the phaseless algae into the Sheng Sheng bag. It was a dark and windy night. In the Ning family's waters, 3 mid-level key training cultivators yawned and patrolled the waters. I don't know what the head of the family is thinking. He suddenly attaches great importance to this area of waters. Usually, only one low-level key training cultivator patrolled, but now he actually sent 3 of us together. That's right. The spiritual fish in the waters are far inferior to those in Kangming Island in terms of quality and quantity. I don't know what's so good about guarding it. I got some gossip from somewhere else. It is said that the family will focus on the development and breeding of spiritual fish in the future. If that's the case, coming here to guard this place now may even earn you an important position in the future. Really? Then take another good patrol. The 3-page boat floated in different directions. After a while, the hazy world in front of Lu Xuan became real again. Countless nearly transparent silk threads continued to dissipate and return to the dark golden hidden spirit cloak. After arriving near the Ning family's waters, he used the invisible ability of the hidden spirit cloak to blend in silently, and the Ning family cultivators were unaware. He took out nearly 100 plants of Wuxiang algae from the Sheng Sheng bag and poured them into the waters. The invisible and colorless Wuxiang algae fell into the water, creating tiny ripples and completely blending into the seawater. That overseas cultivator was very lucky to get Wuxiang algae. He probably doesn't know how to separate it. Lu Xuan thought secretly. His spiritual power surged, and his figure gradually turned into nothingness. Outside the Ning family, Sun He rushed to the magnificent building with great interest, his face and his single eye flashing with excitement. He was originally an unknown overseas cultivator. While exploring the seabed, he accidentally discovered the existence of Wuxiang algae. After coming to the Ning family, he presented this rare and precious spiritual plant. Because of its parasitic spiritual fish and its invisible and colorless characteristics, it was valued by Mrs. Ning of the Ning family, and his status improved a lot overnight. After participating in the operation of spreading Wuxiang algae to the waters of Kangming Island, he could feel that his status rose, and glory and wealth seemed to be right in front of him. After the task is completed, I wonder how Madam Ning will reward me. After such a great contribution, she will not give herself to me, right? The one-eyed monk Sun He thought of the wonderful things and laughed, and a nameless fire rose from his belly. He was very proud and came to the beautiful woman amid the compliments and greetings of the Ning family monks. Dao Sun, you are here? As soon as he entered the room, he heard the hoarse voice of the beautiful woman. A black rope shot out like lightning, tied him tightly, and pulled him in front of the beautiful woman. No way. So happy. Sun He thought excitedly, and then Madam Ning's words made him feel down. Dao Sun, according to what you said, the Wuxiang algae spirit plant is yours alone, and other monks can't even detect it? Reporting to Madam Ning, Wuxiang algae was accidentally discovered by me in a remote deep sea. I cultivated a batch of it with special means. It is difficult for others to detect the existence of Wuxiang algae, the one-eyed monk said carefully. Since it is your exclusive property and difficult for others to detect, why have the spiritual fish in mining family's waters recently started to behave like crazy and self-harm? Could it be that Brother Sun secretly spread the Wuxiang algae? The beautiful woman asked softly, but her eyes were cold. The black rope tied him tighter and tighter, making the one-eyed monk Sun He almost breathless. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I'm loyal to Madam Ning and the Ning family. How could I do such a despicable thing? The one-eyed monk blushed and defended himself. It must be another cultivator who found the Wuxiang algae. The Song family. Yes, it must be the Song family who found the method of separation and came to frame me. Under the influence of the black rope, he felt as if his spiritual power was stuck in a quagmire, and his voice became smaller and smaller. Take him down and hand him over to the law enforcement hall for disposal. Remember, confirm the truth of what he said. Also, force him to tell you how he discovered and cultivated the Wuxiang algae spiritual plant, and whether he knows how to separate the spiritual plant from the spiritual fish. By the way, contact the Song family's insider to see what the Song family is like now. The beautiful woman stood up and instructed the two black-robed monks below. Yes. The two responded in unison, escorting the unconscious one-eyed monk back. The moon is as cool as water. After learning about the growth status of the third grade Yulin grass, Lu Xuan came to check for several consecutive nights, and finally waited until the progress bar below was fully filled. The silver-white leaves of the Yulin grass seemed to be flowing with moonlight, exuding a sense of coolness. Lu Xuan carefully picked it, and as soon as he picked it up, a thought flashed through his mind. Yulin grass, a third grade spiritual plant, is cultivated by absorbing moonlight and spiritual power. It is very beneficial to the growth of monsters. At the same time, it is the main refining material for many healing pills. It is very beneficial to the growth of monsters. When it's daytime, I can use it to feed the cloud lynx, the wind falcon, and the demon ghost vine. The monsters that followed him this time were the three mentioned above, and this mature Yulin grass could be used to feed them. Lu Xuan put the silver-white Yulin grass into the storage bag, and focused on the white light ball that quietly emerged. The light ball flickered slightly, and under the moonlight, it seemed to be condensed by the moonlight. He reached out and gently touched the surface of the light ball. In an instant, the light ball turned into countless tiny light points, like moonlight pouring on his body, silently pouring into his body. Harvest a third grade Yulin grass, obtain a fourth grade magic weapon, the moonlight pearl. The thought flashed through his mind, and a silver white bead appeared in his palm. The bead was the size of an egg, shaped like a full moon, emitting silver white moonlight, exuding a sense of calmness and tranquility. Holding it in his hand, he could feel the slight moonlight spiritual power penetrate into the palm through the skin, moisturizing every tiny piece of flesh around the palm. Chapter 300 Lynx's Promotion, Breaking the Delusion Pupil Technique. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on the silver white bead, and he immediately learned detailed information about it. The moonlight bead is a 4th grade treasure. It has been refined over hundreds of years by collecting a large amount of moon spirit essence produced on full moon nights. The moonlight spirit in the bead can nourish the body and soul, ensuring its perfection. At the same time, it can be used to treat injuries to the body and soul with excellent healing effects. Top grade auxiliary magic weapon. Lu Xuan was full of surprises. He didn't expect that this usually inconspicuous 3rd grade Yulin grass would produce such a good treasure. The ability to nourish the body and soul alone made him satisfied. When breaking through the realm, spiritual power, body, and soul need to be perfect. With this moonlight bead, it can be very good to check for leaks and make up for them, slightly increasing the possibility of promotion. Not to mention that it also has a very strong healing effect. Xuan couldn't let go of this 4th grade bead. Spiritual power poured into the gem, and with a thought, a large amount of moonlight gushed out, covering Xuan's entire body. Suddenly, he felt as if he was wandering in a silver moonlight world. Both his body and soul felt extremely peaceful and comfortable. When the moonlight faded, Xuan came back to his senses, still not satisfied, and put the moonlight bead into his storage bag. The only pity is that the healing effect may not have many opportunities to be used. He thought secretly that with his style of doing things, he rarely fought with others. If he did, he would be absolutely sure, so he couldn't imagine that he would have the chance to get hurt. Xuan laughed at himself and was about to go back to the house. He saw the demon ghost vine sneaking in the corner, the grey vine swaying gently towards him, looking like a lackey. He felt something in his heart, and when he looked up, he saw the wind falcon spreading its broad wings in the silver black night sky, motionless, like a dark cloud. The spiritual consciousness swept across the entire spiritual field. The cloud walking lynx seemed to blend into the night, with only its emerald green pupils blinking like ghost fires. "You 3 little guys, you came here just because you smelled the scent." Seeing the 3 little ones like this, Xuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The 3rd grade Yulin grass had a great appeal to the 3 demon beasts. Usually, Xuan had repeatedly warned them, so they were relatively well behaved. Now that the Yulin grass was ripe, the 3 little ones couldn't wait to come over. Xuan had originally planned to feed them during the day, but since they were all awake, he might as well feed them. He took out the Yulin grass from his storage bag, divided it into 3 pieces, and threw it to the 3 little ones. The grey vines of the demon ghost vine shot out like a venomous snake, grabbing the silver white plant. Many tiny cracks appeared on the vines, with dense and tiny serrations above and below the cracks. The Yulin grass clung to the vines tightly, and the teeth kept biting and crushing them. At the same time, grey mucus was secreted from the cracks, wrapping the Yulin grass fragments into the vines. After swallowing the Yulin grass, feeling that each vine was nourished by the rich power of the moonlight, the demon ghost vines fluttered wildly on the ground. From the moment it entered Xuan's spiritual field, it marked many rare and precious spiritual plants. Today, it finally got what it wanted and enjoyed a feast. It was so moved that it almost shed mucus. After Feng Hun and treading cloud lynx took the Yulin grass, a layer of moonlight like smoke and mist sprinkled on their bodies. The 2 beasts were shrouded in it, and the moonlight expanded and contracted with the rhythm of their breathing. Xuan noticed that as treading cloud lynx absorbed more and more moonlight spiritual power, its aura continued to rise. A pair of emerald green eyes suddenly lit up, and through the misty moonlight, the lynx's breath instantly reached its peak, and the silver white moonlight lingering around it was completely absorbed into the body. When he was still in Linyang Market, he began to raise this alien cloud-stepping lynx. After years of careful cultivation, it was raised with various monster beast spiritual fruits, including rare spiritual plants such as the 3rd grade jade scale fruit and the 3rd grade Yulin grass. The 1st grade cloud-stepping lynx finally broke through the shackles of blood and was promoted to a 2nd grade alien monster beast. Its figure was revealed, and it was obvious that its size was 3 points larger than before. Its hair was black, and its emerald green eyes were full of spirituality. At a glance, it was deep and seemed to be breathtaking. Under Xuan's spiritual communication, the cloud-stepping lynx roared with a hint of intention, and then, with a little force on its thick white cloud-like soles, it suddenly turned into a black light and swept through the spiritual field at a high speed. The speed is more than doubled. Let's test the attack power again. Xuan ordered the lynx to stop, took out a 2nd grade spiritual ore from the storage bag, and threw it at it. Several sharp claws emerged from the white jade soles and toes of the cloud-stepping lynx. A gust of wind whistled past, and 5 deep marks were left on the surface of the spiritual ore. This lethality is no less than some 2nd grade attacking magic weapons. Xuan secretly sighed. After continuous testing, he found that the physical strength, speed, and attack power of the cloud stepping lynx were much stronger than before. Not to mention that it was originally a different kind of demon beast with a pair of green eyes that were extremely magical and could detect things that could not be seen normally. It had discovered the traces of evil spirits more than once in the market in the secret realm. After the promotion, the green eyes also improved a lot, but there was no opportunity to show off their skills at present. Xuan even had the idea of finding a few evil spirits to practice with. He looked at the increasingly majestic cloud stepping lynx and could not help but reach out and pull the two tufts of grey hair on the tip of its ears. Behind the lynx, a white ball of light quietly emerged, flickering slightly, attracting Xuan to touch it. Xuan slowly reached out his hand, and as soon as he touched the ball of light exploded into countless tiny light points, which formed a blurry pupil that was close to nothingness and drilled into Xuan's brow. Or thought flashed through his mind. Cloud Stepping Lynx was promoted to a 2nd grade demon beast and obtained the 3rd grade magic breaking illusion pupil technique part 1. The thought disappeared and a large amount of information instantly poured into Xuan's sea of consciousness. Breaking illusion pupil technique, 3rd grade magic, part 1. Plays a role in improving eyesight and nourishing the mind during practice, can sense subtle changes in spiritual power, greatly reduce the influence of illusions, and has a certain chance of directly breaking through illusion arrays and illusions of the 3rd grade and below. The 3rd grade pupil technique, after successful practice, can enhance vision, see through illusions, and even break formations with one glance. It's a pity that there is only the upper part of the technique. I don't know how to get the lower part. Could it be that the lynx wants to be promoted again? When the 1st grade alien lynx is promoted to the 2nd grade, the light ball reward is the 3rd grade pupil technique. If the lower part of the technique is obtained when it is promoted to the 3rd grade or higher, doesn't it mean that the lower part of the pupil technique to break illusions may be a 4th grade or even 5th grade technique? Xuan speculated, thinking that he might have a 4th grade or 5th grade pupil technique, and his heart couldn't help but feel happy. Your performance today is worthy of praise. Remember to guard against arrogance and impatience, practice well, and strive to break through as soon as possible. He instructed the stepping cloud lynx. The lynx walked by gracefully with an expressionless face, but deep in his heart, he kept cheering and encouraging, and the idea of practicing hard was heard by Xuan without missing a word. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.